Applications Center Board of Directors to order. We will start with the roll call, and I'll begin with myself, and then we will go around the room to the left, and then we'll hit anybody who is online. I'm Alva Boglin. I work for Clackamas County. I represent counties, and I'm also the treasurer of this board.
Josh Thomas, Executive Director, OUNC.
Johnny Staff, I represent ODOT.
Al Thomas, representing OUCCs.
Nate Rivera, Henderson Energy Services, representing municipal electric utilities.
Scott Gallegos, One Call Concepts.
Josh Milliken. Kitty O'Keefe, Executive Assistant for the OUNC.
Kevin Hennessy, representing Oregon Public Utility Commission. Paul Smith, representing contractors. Connor Tony, representing excavators.
Jessica Epley, working for Zipley Fiber, representing telecommunications companies with more than 50,000 access lines.
Aaron McConnell, landscape contractor. Dale Brumingen, representing Interstate Natural Gas Transportation, TCNP.
Sean Bergeron, representing Cabinet and the CCUCC.
Okay, we have two joining us via Zoom, Meg and Kim Boyd. Meg, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You froze.
Are you able to hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, we ran extensive tests on this and it was working yesterday and the day before.
We can hear you again now.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim.
Are you able to hear us?
Yep.
Is it Mitch just doing this? Really Mitch.
Mitch, can you hear us?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mitch.
Visitor registration, I believe everybody has signed the guest sign sheet.
All the ones around, there's only three I'll just share it.
And if I understand correctly, there's no testimony today. And Megan, I believe you have our safety moment for today. You want to go ahead with that?
I do. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's hard to hear you guys. Can we skip ahead? I included a couple sheets, but I'm gonna split up the safety moment into two things. One more page, Kitty. So today I was just gonna talk about heat-related illnesses, and taking the time to adjust to the heat, staying hydrated, watching for signs of heat-related illness since it's going to warm up. It's a big topic, and wearing the correct PPE for the heat that you're in, taking time to rest and cool down in between and rehydrate frequently. And then if you could go to the next one. To the next slide if you can, Kitty. One more. I included a couple things if somebody wants to go back and look, but construction workers account for more than 1 out of 3 of all work-related heat deaths, and extreme heat can affect balance, reduce awareness, slow reaction time, and the workers are at most risk between the ages of 18 and 34 and then over 54. So training workers to understand how heat stress affects their health, develop heat awareness, fall injuries, and hydrating, taking breaks, drinking water when necessary, set up a buddy system if you need to, schedule breaks, and again, the proper PPE for the climate that you're in is really important. And it sounds like it's going to be really hot next week, so I did want to touch on that. And then one that Josh brought up that I didn't know about, and I was kind of interested to read, was Safety Break for Oregon, which is today, May 10th. Oregon OSHA had launched a campaign urging industry leaders concerned about an increase in workplace deaths during 2002. And so they basically created a day dedicated to safety. It's a really cool thing to read up on different things that companies do, rewards, t-shirts, certificates, and all the different taking a break for safety moments that people are participating in today. And it's all available on the Safety Break for Oregon at Oregon OSHA website if you have a chance to look at it.
And Jessica. So those have been made. A lot of tutus and whatnots.
There was a few more.
And Paul was very popular, but he was listed twice.
Yes.
Very active in seconding. I prefer eye candy. Eye candy?
Make a motion to approve the minutes with corrections as noted.
I second.
The motion was made by Jessica, seconded by, I'm sorry, I'm getting.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Was that part of the motion?
To accept the minutes as amended. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please state the same. Hearing no opposed, the motion passes. And there was no open testimony, so we will move on to the OUNC billing and aging report. Stop when you're ready.
Sure. I work very hard.
I'm working for 2 strings today, guys. They see this, the PowerPoint is done?
Yes.
Perfect.
All right. So for our incoming totals, we have 28,277, which is down 9.64% from April of 2022. And of course, down 8.27 year to date. If you look at the chart, you'll see it's pretty flat actually though, over the last 5 years, 6 years. Next slide, you'll see a similar result. As far as the trend, 158,007 total outgoing tickets. Similar reductions, 1.24 over last year, 9.89. But again, I think we saw that spike in 2021. That is telling a strong tale. Next one, in and out ratio. We've spoken a lot about this at 5.4. This is something we're seeing everywhere. Just again, it's the trend with all the centers, at least that I cover for sure. 5.49 in April of last year. I take percentages. This is trending up, which is good. Although we seem to have plateaued a bit over the last several years, which is again kind of what those efforts are for. 792, so 71% of your tickets is are iTix right now. Your blended ticket price came in at $5.03. Again, this isn't a huge margin from 5 years ago to go from 486 to 503, but it is an increase you're seeing. Your total iTix discounts again were 22,895, and that should read April, not March. Sorry about that. ASA was 30. So again, that's the average seconds to answer. That's basically saying how quickly your calls are being answered. So that averages at 30 seconds right now, with the contractual obligation being 60 seconds. So we're killing it. And then your incoming tickets by county, actually Marion took over from Lane as the 4th and 5th positions shifted, but still those are the top 5 counties, which have been pretty consistent since I've been around at least. Are you finding this information all valuable still?
What's the average iTick adoption rate amongst all the states that One Call Concept serves?
So like what are the percentages across the nation? We have some in the 90%. 70 is becoming kind of the low end for us. So we'd like to see them up. Kim, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I would agree with exactly what you said. We've got a couple of states that are in the 90s, a lot of states that are in the 80s, mid 80s, and then some that are in the 70s, and maybe one state that's just below 70%.
So definitely room for improvement. Again, that's this board's greatest cost saving as far as our contract is concerned. So the group effort to get that number growing up, and us too. So it's a shared pleasure. And that's all I have to report. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Nate.
Cameron Scott, if you found anything in the states that are in that 90% that they have done, that Oregon could utilize to help educate and encourage? Are they doing something we're not? Maybe that's the question.
Some of the states where we have the highest percentage are like the New York City, Long Island area. They've just always been really high with their iTick percentage. and Louisiana is always really high. A lot of other people saw a really big boost during COVID with the announcements that we put on at the beginning of the phone calls, with the blast of increased homeowner usage, and then they just didn't really come down after COVID. We have a national ITIC team that really surveys all of the states and looks to see what's happening in this state, what can we use, and we're really utilizing that across the board. And Scott, you can kind of talk to the newest ITIC campaign that your group is doing with sending out the baskets and talking about the amount of time and cost savings that a company can realize with the amount of time that people are on the phones compared to doing ITIC.
Well, you kind of covered it, but that's what our group's doing. So we've highlighted the top 10 in our territory, which, again, for us, it's Oregon, Washington, Montana, Hawaii, and Kootenai County in Idaho. So we've identified kind of the top 10 or 20 individual callers that we want to bring over to the ITIC side. We've sent out some gift baskets to incentivize them to do it. And then, as Kim said, just really trying to highlight the values of ITIC and as a cost saver. We're trying to focus on hit the right people at each organization. That's kind of a challenge. A lot of times we can send messaging out to the people that respond to ITICs or that call in ITICs, but they're not as incentivized to save the 5 minutes that you could from maybe a 5 or 6 minute phone call down to a 2-minute online ITIC. So we're just doing start with that. That's our camp right now, current campaign.
Kevin, you also have a question?
Yeah, I'm interested in reaching out to stakeholders and trying to figure out the gap of why there's hesitancy. One of the things that I'm interested in is how many complaints you guys feel about the software and who's complaining, who are your trouble issues, who are those stakeholders that are experiencing problems, and have we ever had as a board any insight on those complaints related to the service, so we can figure out what the roadblock is. If we don't know about the issue, how can we say that the system is working? So just 2 points there.
Sure. Honestly, we get a lot of the complaints from you. I mean, we've heard a lot of complaints from you, the you that is this work.
Well,
Mike just brought some complaints.
yeah, my example is I was talking to a stakeholder and I don't have permission to. I don't know who they are, but his experience was being on the phone with one called Concepts to work out an issue with ITIC for hours. And there was a disconnect in communication. And me, servicing the board and trying to figure out if the system's working for stakeholders. Do we have insight on that? And I don't have any other specifics on that. And I appreciate that we bring complaints, but what are the complaints that One Call Concepts is getting? And would it benefit the board to have a listing or characterization of that as we go forward?
So some of the big complaints we heard initially were ones that were also shared here with the board is reading and understanding the driving directions and instructions. Honestly, I haven't heard a lot of that lately. Of course, my response to you is always going to be, if you can give me that example, I can review that call. And we're happy to do that. You're always welcome to audit phone calls. That's something we've encouraged and made available to the board.
But we just don't have, if it doesn't come up, we don't have a listing of what those issues are. And I think that's a real problem. And it's probably something that we haven't partnered with One Call Concepts on in the past to create that visibility. And so I'd be interested in having some conversations on how to achieve that and how you feel those complaints. That's all I have.
Kevin, do you think something like a survey put out to the people who are not using ITIC would be beneficial?
I think a report from One Call Concepts about the types of issues and a traceable, verifiable and traceable record of the incident that we could review, maybe the root issues, but just a lot of things. We had issues related to data entry or something to provide some insight. And we monitor call time, but do we really know how much time people are spending trying to process their own ITICs? You know, is there a benchmark there that, you know, we should be observing for the users? Because if they're frustrated, disincentivized, you know, then we're not going to get that above that 70%. So operationally, I think it would be useful to have that information, and I'd love to explore some ideas from the board, and as well as Scott and team to bring some light to that.
And we actually have that information. So we can tell you how long someone took to process an ITIC. The term related to fixing an ITIC online isn't really, I don't know that we have that. But I can certainly, and a lot of those questions come directly from our ITIC team, so it's not that same recorded, monitored, ticket associated time. Happy to spitball ideas on how we can get more of a quantitative look at the IT process. I mean, I remember Frank and I talked about that a couple years ago when I started, as we're moving towards a higher percentage of ITIC volume, what's the KPI for ITIC versus call it. But
if it's even just a troubleshoot ticket, you know, a troubleshoot list that's tracked, and a general characterization, I think that's a good starting point. But it needs to be TBC, you know, traceable, verifiable, and complete. And that's what I'm concerned about for users, and trying to get onboarding above 70%. If we don't have that.
Shauna, was
Oh,
that?
it was actually just feedback, but it was answered.
Okay. Our ED has his hand up first.
Is there any, it's related to this.
Yes.
So, we did have one, I don't know if it's a complaint or a suggestion. I think Scott was copied on it too. It was, Adam Deshawn from Mid-Willamette UCC. And he was saying that he wants to see addresses included on the tickets, in the right of way. So maybe you can speak to that one of like what next steps are and how that works, because that was just one example from recent history.
Well, the request was to have, you know, places that are not associated with an address be given an address. And we've just, our stance is that that location should be marked from cross street, not an address, because we don't, if it's in the right of way, it's not at an address, and so to send somebody to that is, it's kind of, I mean, so I understand them in their mind, they're like, well, I'm digging up that tree in front of that house, which makes sense that that be the address, but if they're doing a whole street front, you know, we kind of have to create some rules that cover the whole circumstance and not just one. They have the opportunity to put that address in. They can always put an address in the remarks field that would be searchable for them, but there'll always be a point, an intersection point, or a mile mark or something that they can get, you know, distance direction from if there's not an address. So
They had a discussion at their UCC meeting about the system wasn't working for them in that regard. So that's just one example recently that popped up.
That's one of the things that I've also noticed and looking at other state rules outside of one-call concepts, service territory or clientele is rules do help provide some clarity on what is expected for the system to operate in order to get this service, being a cross street as a minimum requirement. So creating some visibility on that. You would probably benefit both of our interests, not just for the board operation, less complaints, but more clarity as well.
Nate?
Kevin, for clarification, your request, are you looking just for Oregon specific stats, or are you thinking just all OCCs to get a broad understanding of what people are struggling.
I'm interested in in what our users experience.
So Oregon specific, because I think it would be helpful to see everybody, because everybody's using the same one call ITIC system, so I think our scope would be probably more, we'd probably get better data if we do all of the states that they serve and see what's the problem across all the states, but I'm open to, it's your request, I was just quite.
Different states would have different rules. And different applications, there's different size requirements, so it would never be an apples and apples, but you're right, there are some foundational things that we can possibly explore.
Jessica?
Going back to the original comment that Nate made, and the fact that we're looking to drive at those who are not using the system currently, right? Because that's where the biggest gain is going to be. Seeing the list of your top 25 new friends in Oregon would be really helpful, because then this board can make some decisions about maybe outreach.
Yeah, that's an easy report to pull at any time. And honestly, if anybody in here wants some of that report access, we can grant that. And if you ever want to pull it kind of ad hoc way, but it's a very easy report, just let you know what time frame. Usually the last month is the most reasonable, because as time, people might have called in a bunch of, or called in a bunch of tickets before, but the last time they did, but so if you pull 5 months, it's not relevant either. But yeah, I can pull that today and do that too.
It would be great just to have that like as a part of the regular board packet, like here's your non-user list
Yeah, I mean, it's a big, I can give you a list, yes.
of the top 25 non-users.
Top 25, you want phone calls or you want,
Non-users.
2.0.
I
Oh, we
would
don't
say.
have 2.0. Okay, never mind. Yeah,
Trying to narrow the scope.
it's the top 25 is, I mean, you figure 30% of your phone or tickets are coming in via phone, or less than 30%, so top 25 might really quickly get into the onesie twosies, so. But I'm happy to provide that. That's really easy to do. Thank you for the easy request. Just
Great, sir.
ask for something.
Yeah, I might have come in a little late, so excuse me if I'm asking the same question, but are you seeing more of an issue or complaint on tickets that are coming in outside of the ITIC website, via phone call or anything like that? Or is it anything across the board? I know we've been struggling with some tickets in general that are coming through without addresses, but really large polygons for small projects. And if that's a phone call issue that's coming through one call, or if it's a internet issue where people are just drawing a massive polygon and it's getting approved that way, it's making it hard for them to stay on top of it.
When you see the big polygons, it's typically phone related, because we're limited to the information we have available on the map and the conversation we're having with somebody. I take the 2.0 in particular, NFT in particular, designed to get a very small location, a 10-foot radius around a whole.
And that's what my experience using it. Curious if that's contributing to more confusing tickets coming through if it is the phone related ones versus the internet.
We're gonna, our operators are trained to give a buffer for notification area, but that polygon from a phone call is never to be used as a white line kind of flavor thing, whereas NXT, you can actually draw the box around the circle, draw the circle around the tree that you're removing in your backyard.
Yep.
And then that is a notification polygon as well.
Yep.
But we're in there, the maps we have might not have specific parcel data there, so it might have a range, like this is, 123 Main Street through 123 Main Street, so you have a 10-block radius, but we're not gonna pick which house in there is yours, so we're gonna have that bigger notification polygon. But then the marketing instructions will be what locators are specifically trying to mark. So Kevin, I think, is looking at from a more quality assurance perspective of how do we make sure that there aren't any complaints happening that are resulting in lower use of ITIC, which we're not seeing. We're not seeing a decrease in ITIC numbers. That percentage is still, it's been floating around that 72%. So we didn't see it come up to 74, and now it's down to 68.
Yeah, and to Jessica's point, and for the list though, I'm concerned at the user that, not the top 25, but the users that started and then stopped using it. Okay, so that's a trend for a particular user type. And that's why I think the data set that we requested would shed some light on that, for auditing purposes, but the experience is that, you have a new ITIC user, possibly, very, on a refreshing basis. But it's, who stops using it and why? And that could be helpful.
And just do that. We haven't seen that at all. We haven't seen somebody that used it and then that on a.
I guess you haven't, but I need to, there's data there that would support that, and that's what I'd like to get at.
Okay. I want to make sure I get that.
Yeah, and it's something that, we can do some thought, deep thoughts on. Trying to figure out, because we don't want to, if the data is existing, then it might be easy to generate a report, or, do an analysis. Certainly not going to ask something that you guys aren't collecting for already, at this point.
Yeah, well, in that same report where I can pull the top 25 that are calling and not using iTick, in theory, I could pull that same report with a comprehensive usage, iTicks and phones, and then pull that for September and see if there's a change in particular that's going in the direction that you're kind of worried about. It's just it would be however many users call in September, it could be thousands. So it's
Sure.
We can rule out all the onesie twosies and get to the 10 plus users maybe in September. So I think there's a way to do it. So
Yeah.
I just want to get on the same page with you so that we're asking them the right question.
Yeah.
So could I say that you and I can work together on that?
Yeah, I'll follow.
Okay.
With Josh.
Kind of a related tangent to this, I'm going to be asking the board for approval to stand up an ad hoc committee on data and research today. And so that could also fall into that committee too, if we want to do a deep dive into, because the intent was to look at the new dirt data, the state heat map, what else we can pull from PUC and other agencies, but we could also look at OCC data as a part of that, it would fall into that committee. So that could be another option.
And with that, let's move on to the treasurer's report. I as treasurer. And so I will give you some overview before John gets ready for it. We received our March financials on Tuesday, May 9th, so just yesterday, but the numbers have been updated in our budget spreadsheet, so that is available to everybody. With minor exceptions, we ended the first quarter on track in most categories. The revenue, interest, training fees, and fines penalties are all down, but we expect these to increase starting this month. For perspective, these three budgeted categories represent about 0.5% of our total revenue. Expenses, the red flag areas remain the same, the banking fees, the accounting, and payroll. We're continuing to work with TBC to prevent unnecessary fees and interest charges. Numbers for training and education are down. That is in part because classes hadn't fully ramped up through March, and it reflects a conscious decision to save money with scheduling lower cost rooms and accommodations. Board administration costs were 5% over budgeted, but this is not a concern since our reduced meeting frequency will compensate for this. We're still in the red by approximately $34,000, which has improved from the February financials. As previously reported, it takes some months for the front-loaded costs in January to equalize with the overall budget. And those front-loaded costs are, the majority is the $60,000 that we give to the OUCC to distribute to all the local UCCs. For some other updates, we have our invitation to bid for accounting and payroll on hold until we know if we are converting to the state payroll system. And I think Josh will get into that a little bit more. And part of our ongoing budget review in preparation for 2024, we need to identify ways to fulfill our obligation to have the 3 months of operating expenses in our reserves. So with that, if Josh is ready,
I am.
good.
Yeah, so you covered all the highlights. I'd say just if there's a major theme, no major red flags or issues that we didn't already know about. The big question is, will tickets pick back up now that we're entering dig season? I know we had some adverse weather conditions in the first 3 months of the year that might have held things back a little bit. It does reaffirm our decision last year to increase the service tariff, because had we not done that, the decrease in tickets would have been exacerbated by the lower ticket price, and our budget would be hurting a lot more, but it's held us relatively solid. So this is kind of the breakdown of why we're at where we're at right now. Outbound tickets are down 9.89%, inbound are down 8.27%. We receive funds from the outbound and pay for the inbound, so that's a major impact. As a result, even though we increased in 2 phases our service tariff, we're only up 1.94% in revenue this year, or we expect that to be closer to at least 10%. You can see the numbers there, so I won't get into that, but contract costs as a result of the lower tickets have also decreased 6.58%. So that's a bright spot to it. But these numbers are only through March, so remains to be seen with April, May, then I think it'll give us a much better sense of where we're headed this year. We approved last month our updated or clarified reserve policy. So we're gonna have to talk about now, how do we actually meet that requirement? We're down, I would estimate, 150,000 to 200,000 from where we should be now that we've approved a specific threshold. So we'll just need to find a way to recoup that, whether it's through carryover from this year or out of the budget for next year. We did not approve the February financials, and we just got the March numbers in time for this meeting. So as a result, we'll need to approve both February and March. And I think that covers it. I will talk a little bit about the accounting and payroll solicitation later, but just as the summary version, we are awaiting the decision from DAS. It's going to give us some recommendations. Nate's been working with them, with the committee. And if they advise that we work with the state payroll, there's no reason for us to be soliciting payroll services from private providers, because it'd be a waste of their time and our time, and we have to start the process over again. So we do expect an answer within 2 to 3 weeks. So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have clarity on that. And that is all. I'll open it up to questions for me or all the.
No questions? Does anybody want to make a motion to accept the minutes? Excuse me, the treasurer's reports. Nate?
Before motion, I think I'd probably comment.
Yes.
So for clarification, Josh, yesterday was the first day that they gave us the contact people for human resources and payroll from DAS. And so 2 to 3 weeks is probably not for that process.
Okay.
So I don't think we could commit to next month having a recommendation, because it would be a contract with those services and those conversations. So.
Unless it's a no-go, if they say if we're not a fit for that, for working through the state, then we.
Yeah, the initial conversations will happen, but we wouldn't have a direction or recommendation. by the
Gotcha.
next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that's just on payroll and HR. We should have a recommendation on the secondary part.
yeah, the payroll part is the only thing holding up the solicitation, is because we'd be asking for the 2 different things, so. And then I should have mentioned too, all of our budget numbers are updated in the spreadsheet, which you all have access to anytime, so. If you ever have questions on that, let us know.
Motion to approve.
Second,
This is just the April.
February and March. So we have a motion by Nate, a second by Jessica to approve the February and March treasurer's reports. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please state the same. And no opposed, and the motion passes it. Next we have our board of directors officers reports. This is going to go really fast. Our chairperson is out sick. Our vice chairperson is on the road. Our treasurer, that's me. I have nothing to report other than what you've already heard today. Our secretary has been redirected to another meeting. And Kevin, what do you have for us?
Happy to report that IT and I have been working to surmise all the enforcement information related to investigations and inspections for damage prevention safety. Safety practices. It's a finalized report from the information that I shared with the board in December of 2022. And I should have that out by the end of today as a summation. So very excited to report that. Other than that, nothing else.
Will you be able to share that with us?
Today? Yes, but I don't have it right now.
Right. So you'll send it to Katie and she can send it to the whole board.
Yeah, there's a number of stakeholders that have expressed interest in it, so we'll be sending it to them, not only to the board, but.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. And now our staff report, like Dr. Katie.
Yeah, this one will be a little bit longer. So. First of all, just another sound check. Did things get better for those?
Yeah, for the most part, we can hear. Every once in a while, it sounds like it's farther away.
Okay. We did some extensive testing on it. Kitty and I were calling it couples counseling between these two owls because they weren't working together very well. And so we spent some hours working that out. I think they should be good. If we have any more problems with them, these were the first generation meeting owl product. We'll probably sell these or get rid of them and then upgrade to the next one because it's too important. And I do again apologize for the technical difficulties last month because we want to be able to make that experience joining from the office or home as good as being in the room if possible.
This sounds good now. You're good.
Oh, thank goodness. Good. Thank you, Mitch. So slides are on the screen. This is as big as we could make it. So I'm sorry if it's micro print. But we already covered the accounting and payroll services invitation to bid. It's all teed up, ready to go. We have 5 firms lined up that we believe could do a good job for us. So once we get the go, no go on that, we can move ahead, whether or not we're only asking for accounting or in my ideal world would be consolidating those services. Tariff exemptions, the Department of Justice affirmed our current system. One of our board members had called some questions as to whether or not the under 50 tickets and $500 thresholds for the subsidy that we were administering it properly, and our DOJ contacts said we are, even though we're still looking at that. Thanks to Frank Planton at OCC, he pulled together some numbers after our last meeting. The board had asked for, what does this look like if we do tackle this in the 2025 legislative session? What do the exemptions and subsidies add up to? And these are 2022 numbers, so this is before the service tariff increase went into effect, so you can add a little escalation to this. But they estimate it would impact 117,000 tickets and change, totaling over $150,000 in revenue. And that's last year's numbers. So it'd probably be, I would say, closer to 165,000 this year. The under 50 exemption, which basically says if you have less than 50 tickets in a year, you're not charged, that totals $10,000. So not a huge amount, about 8,000 tickets. The bigger one is that over $500 cap for, and it's set in statute. So if you look in our standards manual, it says exactly what categories fall into this. That totals about 147,000. So that's really where the meat of this issue is that over $500 cap. And in fact, the DOJ response said we should go back and revisit the ones that are receiving exemptions or subsidies and make sure that they still qualify. And I'm not sure, we need to connect. Frank and I are going to sit down and go over that. So we need a path forward there. The strategic plan review and approval with our chair, vice chair, and other members unable to attend, we're moving that to the June meeting. Our new concept submission form. I think some of you are aware of this, but not all. I put it in the board packets. If you look through the packet, you've seen a copy of it. The idea here is that oftentimes people will bring a great idea to either a committee or to the board, but without any substance. And then without them at the next meeting, then sometimes it falls off. We don't know what they were envisioning or what their concept was. With this form, we'll know exactly what the issue is, what the rule, law, or policy that it's referencing, what changes they're proposing, what committee it should fall into, and any additional information and attachments. So we'll have everything on the front end rather than wasting time in meetings. So if you have feedback on this, it's a draft for this month. We'd like to roll this out next month. So this is the time. Mike gave a couple of good suggestions on it that I've already made. But if anyone else has ideas, I'm open.
Is this just for board members or for?
Everyone. So we'll have this on our website. We can email it or share it. If someone approaches us with an idea or concept or testimony, we can give them that form to fill out. Jessica?
So just to give a little more meat to this, the intent behind this is to kind of adopt what's happening in the OER committee right now, which is we're not discussing new concepts in OERs, that they need to actually, we need to follow what our policy and procedure manual says, which is that the board takes that issue and refers it to committee for working. So this will help to kind of streamline that process. And as we're turning away from being a working board and being more of a policy driven board, this is going to help bring kind of that more robust policy process to our experience. So I want to commend Josh for so quickly putting this together, because we literally met on this last week. And here we have a concept in front of us. And if you have questions about, this parallels a lot of the legislative process as well. So, and even in rulemaking, right? You'll have a rulemaking notice, and then there will be a comment period and possibly a hearing before you get the final rules. So this is going to just help align with that same sort of procedure.
And you'll have more space for these responses than that too. Just you're not locked into one page. Sean?
Is this only for like ITIC stuff, or is this for like contractors having issues with the locates or call lines or all that?
Anything.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an idea that someone wants to bring to the board, and then we've got to figure out how we deal with it. And then this would give us everything we need on the front end to then.
So like downtime, like stuff like
Could be,
that,
yeah,
because Washington does, but Oregon doesn't, so stuff like that you can put on it.
yeah, absolutely. So I think we're close on that. And we'll work with creative with that. Working right once we've got it finalized. We've updated the policy and procedures manual, the bylaws based on the reserve policy and the term limits that we approved last meeting. Jessica did just find a inconsistency between our bylaws and policy and procedures manual that we'll have to fix related to our forum. So we'll bring that up in the policy and procedures committee portion of the meeting. The new 2023 calendar, thanks to Katie for pulling that together in short order, that reflects our quarterly meetings now. After, just as a reminder, after the June Tuesday meeting, we'll be shifting from monthly to quarterly meetings. So after June, the next one will be September, correct? Okay. And that's in your board packet as well. Sadly, we filed our letters of resignation from Kyle Thomas. Thank you, Kyle, for your service. We'll be recognizing him later in the meeting, and also Sean Tarver, who couldn't be with us today. He's already moved on. He's working for Oregon OSHA now. In both cases, it's a positive. They were promoted, so congratulations, and wish you all the best. But we'll miss you. Recruiting for telecommunications cooperatives, railroads, OUCC, cities less than 25,000, and NOLCA or locators. 5 open seats and 3 reappointments pending. We need a motion to stand up the data and research committee. So we've talked about this before. The time has come. We'll have new dirt data to be able to use for that. So the first step is creating it, and then we'll fill it and schedule our first meeting and tackle that. Because this has been an ongoing issue of what more can we do with the data that's available from the member utilities, from OCC, from PUC, and from pretty much all the acronyms. So I'll stop there for a motion, and then we'll continue the report. If anyone has questions, or it would be an ad hoc committee, so we use it until it's no longer necessary and then close it.
I move to stand up a data and research ad hoc committee.
Second.
We have a motion by Kyle and a second by Jessica to stand up a data and research ad hoc committee. Do we have any discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please state the same. Motion passes.
Point of order.
Yes,
You need to appoint a chair.
thank you.
Kevin and we have expressed interest. Do we have others who are interested in being a member of the committee? You expressed interest in being on the committee, not in chairing it.
Thank you for that clarification. I will not be chairing this.
Yeah, you already have.
Josh.
Nate,
Doesn't it have to be the actual chair who assigns it?
Well, it says board chair, but all of us sitting in board chairs today, so she can make it like. Doesn't have to be our board chair, it has to be who's holding the gavel for the day.
She's our highest ranking executive officer, meaning it's our chair, vice chair, and secretary are allowed. So she's our chair.
She can appoint people who aren't in the meeting. That's power.
So far I have potentially interested. Kevin, Lee, Dale, and Nate, are you interested? Or
No, I was
interested?
the question, yeah.
You know,
so is Lee interested in being the chair of that committee?
potentially, and we can ask her.
Jessica, do I need to make this appointment today? Should we check with
It
her?
needs to be, well, I mean, you can let the meeting minutes reflect that you are suggesting that we take the appointment, but need to confirm her willingness to accept. So pending her acceptance of the nomination, you do the nomination.
Thank you.
That's what it
we will
is.
do.
You can
Pending Lee's
also
acceptance.
potentially table it to the next meeting.
But we still have the motion approved to stand up the committee. We'll just hold off on chair of that committee
Okay,
to the next meeting.
I'll put some form to the concept and send it out to group, and then if others are interested or want to weigh in on it, even if you're not going to serve on the committee, I'd welcome any feedback that we got. So I know there's been some wish lists out there that have come up in previous meetings of information that we don't have available. So this, a couple of meaty issues, we received a summons naming OUNC as a third-party defendant involving the Department of Justice. The trial division is representing us, and they're filing for dismissal. They've advised us to maintain confidentiality while this case is active, so I can't go into detail unless we go into executive session, but I can assure you that it's being dealt with appropriately, and that hopefully within the next week or two, we'll get good news that it's been dismissed, but knock on wood. That's why the experts are dealing with it. Sewer laterals. So this has been an ongoing issue. I think I've involved most of the board on this now. There was a complaint filed with PUC, and since this is out of our lane, I'm not going to go into details on the intricacies of it, but it involves sewer laterals. The Oregon Clean Water Oregon Association of Clean Water Agencies sent out to their legal committee, which involves a lot of cities, counties, and organizations, a misrepresentation saying that OUNC was pushing this complaint and that we were suggesting that all cities should locate all utilities in the right of way regardless of ownership, which would not be possible. So we've corrected that misinformation. They have filed a petition to get involved with the complaint, and the League of Oregon Cities is meeting this Friday to discuss whether or not they'll get involved with the complaint as well. While we're not a party to the complaint, we're not involved with that process. The sewer lateral issue is of interest to us, and so I'm planning to attend that meeting, correct any misinformation, answer any questions if it comes up. Otherwise, I'll be a fly on the wall and report back to the board on where that discussion goes, because there could be longer term ramifications from that whole process. So it's just something that I want to make sure is on our radar, and not specific to the complaint, but specific to the issue. So if there's any hesitance or concerns, or Kevin, if you've got any other comments on that, since it falls more into your camp.
Yeah, no, just for the sake of sharing what I'm able to share at this point, background, complaint was filed regarding the sewer lateral locates. Staff took a look, staff scheduled meetings with the defendant to reach a settlement. None was arrived at. Continuance of disagreeing on the interpretation of how the rule is written. And so staff filed a complaint for the defendant to answer to, and at this point within the proceedings is that people can intervene on their interests by input about the case. And that's available through by statute and Public Utility Commission, just our open public process. So that's all I have to share with them at this point. So
Great, thank you.
Without more information about what the complaint is, it would be hard for this board to make a decision of whether intervention would be an appropriate step for us to take. I mean, if this is something that's going to impact our rules, we might want to consider becoming an intervener in this case, if for nothing else, so that we have full access to discovery. So, I mean, is it possible for more detail to be shared?
I have a copy of the complaint and the thread of emails that was shared amongst the legal committee for this Oregon Association of Clean Water Agencies. It came across my desk because a member of a UCC down in Southern Oregon received it and had questions about it, because he said, this doesn't sound right, that you guys have been pushing this, can you clarify? And so that's what started this. And then Nate has also been, his mayor is a member of the League of Oregon Cities, and I think that's how you became aware of it as well. So we do have a fair amount of information on it.
Kevin?
Just a note, it gets a little sticky that, you know, we are applying it and pursuing enforcement for OUNC rules. So if you were to intervene, a lot more explanation would probably need to be presented for clarity on what your objective is. So for clarity purposes, you know, that service list went out to constituents, you know, that are interested in the party, but, you know, for the board to intervene on that, it's kind of like a doubling of the effort. So just point of keeping the sandbox or litter box clean.
I can give the Cliff Notes version of what I know. That's helpful.
Yeah, the service list probably should include the board on matters like that, just as a point of function going forward.
It does.
I didn't get it.
Well, no, the board's employee is on that service list.
So that needs to come to the board for us to review when you're getting something off that service list.
This is the
complaint.
Any active
The
complaint.
actual active
Okay.
complaint, the docket at the OPUC, that needs to be distributed to this board.
Okay, we get a lot of,
Yep.
of different, like if for one case, it's just a long slew, so you want everything?
Yep.
Okay,
I'm going to assume that's gonna be sent out confidentially.
No, it's public record. At the point that it becomes a public docket at the OPUC, that's public record. If there's confidential information in it, we wouldn't see it unless we were an intervener.
So in this case, resident of the city of Portland, has a house.
Hold on.
Yeah.
There is an executive session right after yours. I would prefer to do this in executive session. If we're gonna go into the details of this, we need to follow the executive. We can discuss it in an executive session since we have it on the agenda.
What is the subsection 2I? Is it allow that for, what's 2I? I think 2I is just specifically related to labor.
Right. This is
I don't know if we
a
can
public
do
record. I don't know why we would need to do this in executive session.
I don't,
This
we
will,
can do it, but I don't think we can because we didn't list the subsection of the executive session to include legal matters.
Okay, and if it doesn't, then we can't do it.
Yeah.
If we've already gotten direction from the DOJ that we need to discuss this in executive session, my recommendation would be to wait for that.
that was the prior, item on there. That's the summons.
Oh, sorry, I thought they were all one. so-
It's easy to do. It's different topics, different parties, but in this case, it will be discussed publicly at the meeting on Friday as well. So I think we'd be safe in sharing any details because like Jessica mentioned, it's all posted. So private resident, city of Portland on an alleyway had a sewer lateral that's a non-conforming, but the city has allowed that to exist. He was going to sell the property. He requested the city to locate that sewer lateral, and they said, no, that's yours. You own it. It's your responsibility to locate it and also to register with the call center as a utility. This was addressed back in 1995 because the intent was not have every resident register with the call center as a operator. And so that's the heart of the matter right now is whether or not the resident is responsible or the city is responsible for locating those laterals in the right of way, not on private property, but in the right of way. So it's a gray area. It's a tricky issue. The DOJ has weighed in on this and we have this very detailed.
There's a letter.
It's in our standards manual. So if you want to read the standards manual, there's a page printed in there from our council, and I checked back with her and she said that's still accurate. There's no, even though it's a few years back, it's still accurate, it still holds. So that's the heart of the matter is whether or not residents should have to register with the call center as an operator individually, which could cause a lot of problems with our system. And residents are not typically equipped to locate their own sewer laterals. And then Frank also suggested as an alternative, cities can use permanent markers on curbs. He said it's not typical that they're used, but some cities have used those in the past for laterals so that you've got a marker there and that can suffice under the law as well.
I know you're curious, this isn't gonna increase revenue. Because it'll probably all fall into the
Nate.
And for background, thanks to Frank as well, is when he talked about the 95 law being enacted, that's where the 50 and 500 rule came in as a concession to cities for the increased cost of that. And so as we revisit that, it circles back to this issue where there were concessions made by everybody to enact that. So if we take that away or consider taking that away, let me change the discussion on something like this. So,
Yeah,
fascinating.
it's like the Paul Hartley, the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And I don't have the standards manual in front of me, but if I remember correctly, and this is where I'm vague, I'll have to look it up here, but the locating requirement is for public utilities, correct?
It's for anybody operating a facility in the public right of way.
It was the right to bury facilities within the public right of way. That is a registered member. If they're not, then damages associated with any activity the excavator is not liable for. And there's also some trouble billing statute as well that allows the excavator to claim damages associated with that.
Yeah, so I think under section, on page 14 of the standards manual, under section 757.557, parentheses 3, non-subscribing operators of underground shall be responsible to all injured parties for all costs associated with damage to such facilities. Go ahead. So,
And it's important to couple with that, the fact that you can treble damage or seek damages associated with someone that's a subscriber, but is negligent in providing services. An excavator can pursue damages through this statute, through a statute that I don't have in front of me, but I can reference for the minutes. I'll make it part of the record.
yeah, so I think our standards manual already covers this the way I read it, but my experience is that there are a lot of private utilities out in the right of ways. And whether they have permission from the legal entity or not, it's just a fact. Unless there is my question would be, how did the city give them authority to have that in the right of way? And what are the conditions of that use in the right of way? So if they have created a easement for that lateral to be in there, and even if it's de facto, just by prescriptive easement, because it's been there for however long, then my assumption is that they're responsible for locating it. But I don't know that they would be required to, that the city could require them to become a subscriber. Because my assumption is that they're not a entity providing service. And that's what this is designed around. That's all I have.
Dale, did you have your hand up?
No, but I do agree with what you said.
So I think it might be helpful if I put together an issue summary on this, what I know, and get that out to the board. And then if there's questions, you can, and then I will keep you posted on how Friday goes and any other follow-up. It's come up before with the city of Portland. I know, Scott, you've encountered this a few times since I've been on board, so.
And this might be the product of the board advising us to no longer accept homeowners as members. So. That's in this situation.
Are we allowed to do that?
To not allow homeowners to be members.
Right.
That's what we were told, that members, the homeowners that are connecting their sewer laterals would not be considered members. So they had some other, if that a water line crossing a highway or a private sewer crossing a highway, that would be, they'd be required to be members. But not in this situation where their sewer lateral is concerned.
I would,
That's a current directive to us.
In fact, the owner
as
operator.
a directive from this board, how long ago?
Since I've been sitting here
Okay.
the last 2 years.
I'll follow up with you on that.
We can pull that from the minutes too.
Mhm.
We need to.
I remember making the motion.
Next issue, at the lane. use-
Hey, Josh,
Yeah.
can you keep, I'm gonna lower my hand now. Can you keep us updated on this? This is a little bit more than with the laterals. It's not only city of Portland, there's a lot of cities that are not willing to locate this. We usually, send them to the memorandum that we have over there in the book.
Yeah.
Just keep us updated because this is a little bit more, I have a lot of complaints about it, and we as a facility, we need to know exactly what's going on and how to proceed from here. Do I need to, if this, depending where this goes, there's a lot of damages outside the Portland area. They're coming to us, and it's just a matter of who's paying for what. And we do have a lot of specifics, jobs that the city is saying, we are not required to locate, and you damage it, you pay it. Other city, they're just gonna go there and tell us flat, go ahead and hit it, we're gonna fix it, because we don't have a way. And we definitely, as a facility, we need to make a process for us to avoid this and avoid all the damages that we do. So we usually, when we have something like this, we hire private locates just to get it, trying to lower the damages, but please keep us in the loop and let us know exactly where this one goes from here.
Yeah, will do. It's good to know that this is popping up in your world too. So thanks for that feedback.
It's popping up a lot.
Okay.
And
Josh,
everybody as a excavator, as you know, I use a lot of excavators. They're all complaining about some cities are not willing to do that. They're commenting of it. We never did that. We should not do and I'm talking just the right of way.
Yeah.
Nothing, not on private property.
Sure.
So it's coming more and more and more in south part of Oregon and stuff like that, and cities, Silvertown, Eugene, and stuff like that. But please keep us updated, because it's definitely something that we need a right direction where to go. Once this board meeting, it's finalized with their special board meeting on Friday, keep us updated so we can give our excavators and the same time the cities the correct response.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you.
just. Did somebody else?
I was gonna say, we deal with that over east a lot. That's what they say, just hit it and this,
Yeah, what'd you say?
that was a penalty.
We'll find it.
And they hate to hit, it's just downtime, right? But then when you can't build back then, like they don't.
Wow.
Josh, can we include in the minutes, pages 34, 35 of the standards manual, the letter from, the Department of Justice, thank you, dated June 4th, 2014, to Mr. Hennessy over here regarding this exact thing.
Yeah.
So we have from the DOJ kind of the ruling on that already, so, I just want to make sure that the minutes reflect that this is already in our standards manual.
I think they do now. On the fly.
And Josh, that's the page that I usually refer the city to.
Yeah.
It's not going nowhere.
Yeah, I had to clarify, as I mentioned, some of that misinformation with the Organization of Clean Water Agencies and League of Oregon Cities. Both of their memos had mistakes in there, and in both cases, I shared that letter with them as well, so I know they have it as well.
Nate?
Oh, go ahead. So this conversation has me confused, because if it's clear from the DOJ, the position, but there's still a disagreement, are they approaching it different than the DOJ rule through the PUC? So are they asking for a different interpretation, or? Because if it's clear in the standards manual, it's clear from the DOJ, but there's still conflict. Can we address if it's something outside of what DOJ's ruled on? And if that's the case, do we need to have a discussion about that?
The discussion at League of Oregon Cities is specific to the petition to join the complaint, to become a party, like the Oregon Association of Clean Water Agencies. So it's specific to this complaint, not to the overall issue of laterals. So
So so the complaint is not about laterals,
it is.
but the DOJ's already ruled their interpretation of laterals, but yet they're still making the complaint to the PUC. So, am I?
Let's be clear that it's not a ruling, it's an interpretation provided for public consumption to prevent damage. So at the very beginning, they referenced an older or version of the interpretation. It was updated in order to, I would characterize it to make more clear or create more prominence of this issue. Till then, though, we haven't had a complaint that met the legal threshold for us to enforce this. At this point, staff representing, for the partnership and an effort to enforce the OUNC rules is taking a position that we're asking the administrative law judge for clarity on an actual ruling in this case. Then you have a case law.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah, I was missing the connector there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm pulling up just a quick, since we're on this topic, I can cover this in probably 1 minute.
What's the docket number?
So let me share this and then I'll pull up the docket number. So this is kind of the Cliff Notes version of that letter. So they said the vast majority of cities and sewer districts are willing to locate sewer laterals, but there have been a handful that have refused. Cities in the latter category claim that it's the responsibility of homeowners. The owner has no administrative or operational control over the lateral in the public right of way. That part of the lateral is controlled or operated by the city. The part of the lateral on private property is the responsibility of the owner because the owner does have operational and administrative control of that piece. Therefore, the DOJ concluded that a city or sewer district operating a sewer system is responsible for marking the laterals that are in the public right of way. Those in control of the facility are responsible, not those who happen to have legal title for those facilities. So that's their advice on the matter. So. And I'll include that in the issue summary. But hot topic.
It is a hot topic, Josh, based on so many damages that we have out in the field. They can be, easy, just locating, and we can avoid those, easy avoid it. It is a hot topic, especially when you look at excavator, they have to pay for those damages. Not to mention the customer service with the customers that we damage that by other utilities not complying with this memorandum that we have here. So it is a hot topic.
Yeah, and the ramifications for the overall system too. I think about if the system isn't working right, or comments like just hit it, you'll find it the hard way and then we'll fix it. That's kind of counter to this whole process of what we're trying to avoid and what else they might find in that process as well.
Or what their locations look like, because that where they can just do the green arrow, and it's like it's anywhere over here or over there.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
just
like,
Washington.
oh, and it is Washington, that's.
So that confusion.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's like-
Yeah, 24
have an easement.
Yeah.
24 inches.
you have an easement with a lateral in it, and then you have a sewer service. So is that confusion, that easement off of that lateral, until it goes to private property, that say that the easement's 20 feet and the lateral's in the center of it? Is that confusion, that 10 feet before it goes right to private? So are they saying locating that lateral and what's on the easement, and then off that easement?
I think it's.
That's telling me where that confusion is at, is you have an easement, here's the service, and you're still liable to locate that part of that service that's in the easement. And it kind of sounds like what's that, but I'm just kind of trying to clarify.
Yeah, I think especially with alleyways, seems like where this comes up all the time. Not all Portland neighborhoods have situations like this. Not all cities have situations like this. So it's very situational, but it seems to be that easement in an alleyway. It seems to be the most common. And do you have any other insights on that?
There's a lot of smaller rural cities in particular that just refuse to mark laterals in general, just because of it. I would say it's not specific it's not specific to your alleyways, it's specific to the governing entity.
Backyard.
We kind of don't, well, just even, I remember down in Coos Bay, there was some issues with, they're just like, we don't mark laterals, even just to houses and, so they just kind of refuse to abide by that, but.
There's a lot of, Mitch is right, that this gets tangled up very quickly with, previous interpretation or current interpretation, but also the concept that was originally put in the state law for locatable and unlocatable. reasonable accuracy, which is defined, by a PUC order, was also part of that mix. When you start diluting those terms and application, you are gonna get an inconsistent application of how entities are gonna be applying this. So caution the board, when we look at rules, they take a look at the history of what is all feeding into this. And this is a big issue with those concepts and terms that have historical precedence of application. But when we start meddling with that, this is the result of that.
We run a lot, or run into this situation a lot, directional drilling, where some places will tell us just find it, and we'll end up finding 10 of them in one shot. And then falling back, coming with an excavator, having to make a repair. From an excavator standpoint, or a drill standpoint, you're gonna make 1,000-foot bore, and you hit 10 sewer lines that aren't located, or they tell you just find them. We just find them, but we're gonna have to just repair them. And that's a lot of time associated with downtime, repairs, really frustrated homeowners. And so that is a kind of highly focused situation, but it does happen, and it's very frustrating.
Fortunately, there is continuous improvement built in the law from the very beginning, and that is if there is an unlocatable facility that is damaged for major repairs, it's to be made locatable. So back in the day, it was a little bit tougher to do with tracer wire, but operators do have at their fingertips locate balls, in order to mark that for public right away. Has operators been doing that? Don't know, not here to enforce that. But our rules do create the expectation for continuous improvement with unlocatable facilities. And is that a practice? I'm not asking for an answer, but my guess is probably not. But maybe it's something that could be highlighted, in another time.
Frank mentioned the drilling and boring too. And from some of the pictures I've seen, it looks like sometimes you don't know you hit it until long after.
Depends on what driller and ground conditions, but if it's just a 6-inch 30-34 line, I mean, most of our drillers will realize that they've hit something, but we follow some companies that will remain anonymous that in one section, they've hit 10 sewer lines, and there is a comm line through the middle of these people's sewer line. And then they have issues and we come out, scope the line, and there's a bright orange conduit right through their sewer. So.
Are you looking at me?
Or even worse, the yellow polyethylene line,
Yeah.
it gets rotor-rittered and now you're pumping gas into the house, so.
Yeah.
Because somebody could think their drain line's clogged, run a cable through it, cut that poly line.
So that's, cross-border is a huge issue with that, and so, but that's a different.
Right. I'll get that out to the board then. I'll send it with the after action report, the action items for this meeting. Any other comments before we wrap this up?
I just I wanna backtrack one, but I can wait if there's a better, more appropriate time, but.
No, that's great.
So the first one, summons. I kind of feel like the board should at least be aware of what's going on with that. And whether that includes, maybe that's as simple as making sure that the executive board knows.
And they have been
Okay.
made aware, yeah.
Okay.
And there may be, I need to check, to make sure I'm following the proper procedures, but, because everything I send is public record, unless it's privileged and confidential, but maybe if we had it come from our DOJ contact.
I'm fine as long as the executive board is aware of it, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Well, who are the parties in the lawsuit?
I'll give it generally, an insurance company.
No. The parties that, OUNC, how does it named as an entity of the lawsuit?
I'm
The Oregon
being cautious
Utility
about it, but
Notification Center. Board?
yes,
Oh,
we were
okay.
named as the third party
Just
defendant.
the OUNC was named?
Yes.
Okay, so that actually goes beyond the executive board. That covers all of us. That's why there's an insurance policy that has directors and officers coverage in it. So we have an insurance policy that covers us. DOJ is taking the legal lead on this. Technically, we have the right to include our own attorneys. We would use our insurance policy and have our own counsel. So at that point, I think I agree with Johnny, this really should be something that's socialized. And you need to have the privilege and confidential. So if DOJ is going to be representing us, then they would need to be copied on the email. So you have attorney-client privilege on it.
Mhm.
But that communication should come to the board members
Good,
so that we know.
I can do that.
Technically, we have personal exposure. So in our professional capacity on this board.
I will share that separate from the action items and issue summaries, so it's a standalone, as a privileged and confidential email.
Thank you, Josh, you understand that's not a personal thing,
No.
it's just,
No, I want to make sure we're not breaking ourselves into jail by
Yeah.
unintentionally making something public we're not supposed to.
understand.
Yeah, okay, I'll get that out. And I think I have something I can send by the end of the day today.
Thank you.
White lining came up at the Lane UCC, so we followed up with, our OCC friends because the comment was, why aren't we using ITIC NXT now that we have this functionality for virtual white lining or digital white lining, electronic white lining, whatever you want to call it. And the concern was accuracy, and OCC came back and said it is accurate enough for us to use, and if we wanted to include a buffer, we could include a buffer, but this topic has come up multiple times, and so I just wanted to give that update that it does look like we could work with it. Other states are not yet. Louisiana is the closest to that, it sounded like, but so maybe we do some more research on what Louisiana and some of those other, I think there were 3 or 4 other states that are venturing out. And Katie's been pulling some good information from CGA as well. So do you have anything to add on that or?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. We're using that accuracy now for all the NXT tickets to find the notification level.
All right, and I think I've talked enough, but upcoming events, we've got excavation safety trainings right here, not in this room, but in this building tonight and tomorrow morning. As always, you guys are invited to attend any of those, no cost. We'd like to just audit it. It sounds like we have 40 attendees, so 36. So good turnout, and we'll continue those in Coos Bay and beyond. The new safety forum that we're going to be presenting at, we had 4 presentations lined up for that, is being rescheduled, so I'll be paying attention to whenever they find a new date for that. The Mid-Oregon Construction Safety Summit invited us back for 2024 as a presenter again. And Katie attended the CGA Expo, and it sounds like we'll get a report on that next month. Is that the idea? Or-
Yeah, we thought since Lee and Jamie were here, we just all do it together.
Yeah, she attended with Lee and Jamie, but just as a quick
Recap.
30,000 foot view, it was worth your time and felt like it was a positive for.
Yeah, that was my first time. And it's a lot. I remember you commented last year, like, it's a full agenda. Like, I think I counted over 50 possible sessions. And if you do 2 in the morning, lunch, there's usually somebody presenting, 2 in the afternoon, evening events, it's just go, go, go. But I would highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't been. I think there's something for everybody, damage prevention, and next year it's a lot closer. I had fun 7 hours coming home.
Yeah.
They rerouted us up through Canada to avoid a storm. So now I know I can fly to Europe after 7 hours of in flight. It was pretty crazy. So next year it's, I think, Boulder or Colorado Springs, yeah. So much closer. But yeah, they do a great job. I'd be curious to see before Common Ground Alliance used to partner with, do you remember, Scott, that other?
Infrastructure resource.
Yeah. And I know there was comments years prior, because I know Nate's gone several times. Some board members came back feeling like it was more vendors pushing their product. this, I really felt each session that I sat in was very specific to this subject matter and never feeling that vendor thing at all, so. And Jamie did a great job. I sat in on one of her sessions. Lindsay Demko sat in on one of her sessions, so. And my favorite was, there was, damage prevention with women, and in the ballroom, there was maybe 200 of us. And the CEO from Common Ground Alliance presented with. Susan O'Malley was the first female president of NBA basketball franchise. Anyway, so those two sat up there, and as we came in, we got a glass of champagne and slippers for all the women. And then it was just kind of an open hour and a half of, you know, obviously damage prevention is a lot more men, but you know, just how women are working and getting more involved. And so that was my favorite breakout session, so. I think I just kind of went through my whole.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry to put you on the spot. We'll hear more from Jamie and Lee next month.
Yeah.
So thanks again for representing us there. I think that's time well spent. And we'll integrate the champagne and slippers at the Coos Baby.
I'll do one more quick shout out. Thank you to One Call Concepts. We had two really great networking night outs. We went to Desertland, which is the biggest indoor go-kart racetrack, bowling. We had dinner in the James Bond room. So if you're a James Bond fan, like it was just eclectic stuff everywhere. So, and then the second night we went to a Marriott and had a beautiful outdoor sit-down dinner. So that was really nice. They did a great job.
Now I wish I would have gone. This is the final stretch here. Jason Williams, Northwest Natural Gas, suggested that we partner with porta potty companies to get messaging inside the doors at construction sites, captive audience. And so he said, he
Depends on which
sees
side you put it on.
both.
Everybody has to walk out.
So that was one of
Well,
them. And then signage at subdivisions. He said he thinks we need to do a better job of reaching new subdivisions that can seize damage in those instances. And that if we have more signage along with the porta potties, that we're covering a lot of bases there. Their target audience. Adam, we already mentioned, and then some news with Dawn Moore, who many of you know, was a board member with us for some time, has accepted an executive level position to be named. We don't know exactly what it is, but he is no longer with Cascade Natural Gas, and Greg Watkins is taking over for him. He's based out of Boise, of course, for Intermountain Gas, and we talked about how we could work together in the future. He's going to show presence. He said he's going to try and get to Bend in Ontario on a regular basis, and we'll cross paths at some point. Well, we can cover positive response now or later. Yeah, that's the last item, so I'll turn it over to Kitty and Scott. And what we'll do together.
I was just gonna comment that, so last month, we had Kim Boyd kind of go over the campaign that we're working on from April through. We got a little late start, so I'm thinking May, June, July, and then we'll get metrics in September. Our webpage, we have a new slide. If you go to it, that's like the first thing you see for positive response, kind of getting interested, click on it, everything goes back to the call center. And we've had an e-shot go out. Did everybody receive that? It was, I know Jessica did, because it looked like spam when you open it in Outlook. We have creative working on that, but did all the board members? No. Nobody else got that email?
I'm sorry.
Positive response. Positive response.
I don't recall. I'm sorry, I get hundreds of emails, so.
I know, it would have been either just, when did you get it, Jessica? Was it just Monday or last week?
it was, I think it was,
My
you
days.
saw it morning, I think I got it on Friday.
Okay. That's good to know at the time right now.
I did. I just checked mine, it looks like
Okay,
at least two of us got it.
is it readable? Does it look right? It's,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
good.
because the whole, like, top
very
of mine
colorful.
was white. And then you get down to the middle, you scroll 3 times, you're in the middle of the screen now. There was a block, and you scroll down and there's a footer, but there was a lot of white space rendering.
So they took all the color background out, just kind of reversed it. And then we're working on a flyer. Mitch has some good comments on it. And that would be something like it locating, trainings we can send out to our attendees, and Josh's class we can hand out. So, yeah. Anything else? Have you had anybody correspond with you guys that has seen the positive response and said, like, you know,
I'm not
I'd
sure.
like some more information?
I can check on, or, what do I do, can I provide an update at the next meeting and?
All right, that is all. Any questions for your staff? All right,
So we have executive session scheduled, but because the rest of our executive board is not here, we will put that on next month's agenda. I believe it was related to what Nate's working on anyway, so we'll keep it on the agenda. Okay. And I would like to take let's be a 14-minute break since it's 10:36. And come back at 10:50.
So, yeah, that's close enough. She needs to read, we're gonna go into the executive session, but she just has to say that we can read that.
sorry about that, I misunderstood.
No. I mean, like. I think it's important because we haven't had an update.
Got it.
I have 10:50, so we will call the meeting back to order. And it was my misunderstanding, we will be going into executive session today. So Scott, correct me, I just need to read this as exactly as it's stated. Okay, so we're going into executive session in accordance with RS 192. Let me just stay on. To review and evaluate the performance of an officer, employee, or staff member if the person does not request an open meeting. This reason for executive session may not be used to do a general evaluation of an agency goal, objectives, or operation, or any directive to personnel concerning those subjects. ORS 192.660, subsection 2, subsection I. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room.
And we should be 5 to 7, 5 to 10 minutes. It's not gonna be long.
And I think everybody enjoys to turn it on.
No, it's just board members, correct, that are on there.
Right. So,
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I thought you said.
pause it, okay.
With your staff to this.
Scott, would you let him know we're back in session?
I forgot to ask if she, I'm sure she got that.
Yeah, she left us a message. Yeah.
They all send that all then you guys.
Don't have it.
It was 36 degrees in Bend when I left this morning.
Was it really? Was there snow coming over?
No, there was no snow coming over the past. There's still
Moving
lots.
on.
Yes, we already started to run.
We're still in meeting. Moving on, we have the OUNC Board of Directors Standing Committee reports. We will start with the OAR meeting with Jessica. Thank you. Please pull up the minutes from our last meeting.
Our committee meeting met last week. We were very aggressive with what we worked on. I apologize, the meeting minutes were prepared, but I failed to get them included in your board packets. You had an opportunity to peruse them in advance of today's meeting, so we're all gonna squint at the screen and try and make sense of what went on.
Can you email them to me?
No.
Okay. Discuss and follow it.
Oops.
I think just keep up with it.
I got that.
Okay. First piece of old business that was tackled was OER 952-001-0040. This is amending language requiring excavators to pre-mark all proposed excavation in white paint. There was a lot of discussion by the committee on different approaches. There was some proposed language taken under consideration. The committee has elected not to adopt the proposed language that was received was Common Ground Alliance's best practices related to white lining. In lieu of looking at the proposed language that was on the agenda, we reverted to proposed language on previous agendas and make the recommendation to the board to amend the language as follows. Section 1, except as provided in section 2 of this rule, prior to notifying the Oregon Utility Notification Center, an excavator must, striking language, pre-mark with the color white, change to identify. So an excavator must identify the immediate area of the proposed excavation within both the public rights of way and underground easements. New sentence. This may be accompanied by pre-mark with the color, which may be accomplished by pre-mark with the color white, marking as defined as at OER 952-001-0010 electronic white marking, or providing a site plan. The discussion of including a site plan was to allow for homeowners who were doing work on their individual parcel, methodology that didn't involve either white paint or electronic white paint. Sub 2 is modified to remove sub A, and sub B becomes sub A. So simply moving up before the beginning of the proposed project, the excavator and the operator met at the construction site to exchange the information required under section 1 of this rule. Scroll up, please. Up. Yep, there it is. There we go. Right here? Yeah, we should be right below that. Yeah, there we go. So amendments are on screen. I will make a motion to the board to adopt the recommendations by the OER committee to OER 952-001-0040 as displayed on the screen.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Jessica, a second by Paul to amend 952.001.0040 as shown on the screen. Do we have any discussion about it?
As my last question, was this provided for public review?
This was through the committee and published as a part of the committee meeting. The committee met as an open public meeting. The agenda, as you see it here, was presented during that. And then the next step will be to move into rulemaking, which then will have a public notice. We'll have a comment period and we'll have a hearing if requested.
Got it.
We are not into formal rulemaking. This is just the board moving into rulemaking.
Okay. So with that, as part of a public process, anything that we're making a motion on should be included in the board packet. So that public can comment on it during the public meeting. So if this board is making a public on that. So I understand that they're all the processes you've gone through here, but as part of that, that's my question.
I believe we've met our burden for public disclosure of these proposed changes through the committee process.
Okay, and I'll defer to the board if they want to move forward. That's just part of the discussion.
This vote would advance the proposed changes to a process that would allow for that review and involvement extensively. So I think I would agree that I believe we've met that threshold. And in an ideal world, we should have had it in board packet.
There was a copy of the work log in the board
Yeah.
packet that does contain this information.
So it was
It
technically
was-
in there.
I was presented in my very tiny printed Excel spreadsheet that was included.
Should, just quick,
This one,
should it say pre-marking that reference to being consistent with these accomplished?
Oh, it's a pre-mark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry, I should have caught that earlier.
nope, that's just Scrivener's error. Kevin, did you have something?
my question was, and I apologize for missing the committee, meeting, sick. Was the DOJ brought in on any of these proposed changes for their recommendation or council on providing some suggestions and insight?
No, that would be a part of the formal rulemaking process.
Well, no, you can invite the DOJ in at any time. My question was where they brought in at this phase.
No, because we would take that step during formal rulemaking.
But you can ask them at any time, correct?
This is a committee action, so DOJ doesn't, the board can act in its committee. Until we move into a formal change of our rulemaking, it would not be appropriate to have DOJ opining, frankly, because we need to work through our half-cocked ideas before we get to some sort of formal agreement amongst ourselves about how we want to move forward.
And in the past, the DOJ has participated heavily during these committee meetings in developing OAR, so.
It's a
Yeah.
public meeting, they have the right to attend if they so choose.
And also at the request of any board members. I just wanted to make that point clear. Thank you.
Brewster?
Yeah, this is just basic questions, you know, they're to maybe. This is advancing the requirement to pipeline essentially every local request, correct?
To electronic white line, actual white lining was already in the rule,
Okay.
but this allows for electronic white lining or, where a site plan is available as an alternative.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
I also like to point out that I did provide the board, this committee a rewrite. I was not able to present some of the ideas and concepts that were behind that. So I wasn't part of that kind of discussion. So being asked to do a rewrite and then not being able to present some of the findings and for context. I just want to make it clear that I wasn't given the opportunity to present that at the committee meeting.
The committee took an extensive review of the language provided and had a robust discussion around it and opted not to adopt that language.
I wasn't asked any questions. I just thought it was odd that I rewrote the entire thing, asked to volunteer, but wasn't given the opportunity to present it as it is.
Nate?
Does it merit tabling this for a month to have that process? Like, are we missing things of substance? And what in the two? I guess that you guys feel like you guys went through it, felt good about it. Do you feel like there was a part of it that we could table and you could go through it to provide substantive?
It didn't seem to me that with the amount of items that this committee is working through, that they opted to table it until I was able to present. There are some things that are on the agenda that they haven't gotten to. So it seems like that they went through, did this piece and moved on. And, just wasn't given the opportunity. So nothing against how the meeting was ran, but that's how it was presented as being the first item as opposed to being tabled and prioritized.
Is there anything in this update that we're under time constraint that we couldn't go through that process?
The goal is to batch, what we, assuming the board approves recommendations, for Josh to get started on all the rulemaking that has been approved to date, because we do have a rather lengthy work list. So we're trying to batch as many things and get that process going as quickly as possible. The committee doesn't, you know, for what it's worth, there are minutes that reflect the committee's discussion. There was a very robust discussion about the recommendations that were made. The conclusion of the committee was this is best practices language and this is sort of enforcement driven, but we're focusing on writing a rule that's actionable, right? And so there was a lot of information, and you can just see by the volume of the red on the page, right? That was taken under consideration. Committee didn't feel that there was enough actionable information here that was meaningful to our rule. That's why we opted to go back to the previous proposals and make those recommendations. This is not the end of this process either, right? There will be a public hearing process by which comments can be made, and if there's concerns about omissions or errors in the language as it's being proposed, it will be addressed with stakeholders at that time.
And just one final clarification, how many members were of the committee were present?
Everybody but
Jessica, Micah, Melanie, Alba, Jamie, Connor, Megan, Lee, Andy, and Dale, along with Josh, Katie, myself. And then guests Jim Walton and Justin Buchanan.
So about everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all right, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Okay.
All those opposed, please state the same.
Aye.
So please note, we have two that were opposed. Scott,
I'm sorry. Who opposed?
Kyle, and Kevin.
So that's the language we want, or the language in the proposed minutes?
that language. We have one error, one scrivener's error under pre-mark should be pre-marking, but I made a notation of it, we'll get it corrected.
Oh, I'm gonna abstain, just because I don't understand it deep enough to vote on it.
Okay. Scott, you got those?
Yes.
We'll sync Scott on your minutes.
Excuse me?
We can sync on your minutes.
And that's where that.
Is it Nathan?
Yes, Nathan A.
Then I?
No.
Okay. The committee did have a, just point of order, the committee had a published agenda that included all of this language that was published a full 2 weeks before the committee meeting actually occurred. So this is language that has been circulated quite some time. And we've been following the agenda sequentially. There was no reordering of any matter. OAR 952-001-0080. This is amending the rules to provide design and review. As you'll recall, this came to the board as old business last month and was referred back to committee for additional discussion. Committee had a great deal of discussion around removing the words locatable and unlocatable, as well as the placement of ors, joint staff, and semicolons, so that we were very clear and crisp on our language. Language you see before you represents the proposed language that the committee settled on. We elected to remove language providing copies of the best reasonably available records because it felt redundant to what was being stated in that subsection. So I would make a motion that the board accept the recommendation of the revisions to OAR 952-001-0080, sub 1 as presented to the board today.
All seconds. So we have a motion by Jessica, a second by Paul to amend 952.001.00807 sub 1 to what is shown on the screen. Do we have any discussion? Kyle?
Please, let the record reflect my same comments about public, enrollment.
Hearing no other discussions and seeing nothing on screen. Kevin, sorry, didn't see you.
Please let the record reflect, the same concern not having the DOJ. Present. For guidance and suggestions.
Any other comments, discussion? Hearing none, with all that, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please state the same.
Aye.
So Scott, again, you have Kyle and Kevin who are opposed. And is there anybody abstaining? Yes, Nate, okay. With that, the motion does pass.
Committee discussed OAR 952.001.010. That item that was recommended by Kyle. No additional information was received by the committee. Committee is removing that item from the work log until additional information can be provided as via a concept document. The committee discussed creating a damaged ticket. This was language that needed to be vetted by Melanie Lewis. She's requested that the committee table that item until she has an opportunity to put together a concept on it. We're expecting that forthcoming. Committee discussed OER 952.001.0090, reducing the 45-day ticket life. This was recommended by Jamie Lemke as a result of the American Gas Association white paper that we received earlier this year. Committee discussed the various challenges or changes that could occur by reducing the 45 calendar day period for a ticket life to 28 calendar days. Considered changing the ticket life to 30 days to make it simpler for addition. When you're in the field, you just simply add 30 days into the next month for the date that you're actually operating on. And the committee opted to adopt the 30 calendar day ticket life language. So I would make a motion that the board accept the recommendation of the OER committee for OER 952.001.0090, reducing the 45-day ticket life to 30 calendar days.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Jessica, a second by Dale to amend 952.001.0090 as shown on the screen to 30 days, not 28 as shown on the screen. Do we have any discussion on this?
Please, let your record reflect my previous comments.
Kevin?
Same.
Okay, so I'm probably missing something. Maybe you can explain this for me. So by lowering the ticket life from 45 days to 30 days, now my locators have to go out every 30 days instead of 40 days to remark it because they're going to have to be calling in new tickets every 30 days instead of 45 days. Am I reading that right?
The refresh period interval would become 30 days, correct? When we discussed it in the committee, balancing ticket volumes ticket volume increase resulting from refresh tickets or new tickets being called in versus the number of projects that actually extends to that length of period. And
coupled with our weather and the presence of paint on the ground, the likelihood of presence of paint on the ground, for honestly more than 28 days, the committee concluded this was the right step, acknowledging what's already happening in the field today. Likelihood after, 28 days, there needs to be a refresh of that paint anyway.
Okay, I'll just tell you that we use paint and flags. And, our dig-ups don't usually happen at the end of the project. They usually happen at the beginning of the project when there's, paint on the ground already. I'm concerned, probably like everybody else here, my locate costs have gone up considerably in the last couple of years. This is a big cost to me. And I'm talking about even just my crew, I'm not even saying ODOT wide.
The committee discussed, that impact on our members, but also felt that the other changes that we have, queued up for rulemaking right now, specifically around design locating, large projects, all of the things that we've done to maybe make our rules clearer and help to clarify for the locating community better resource management. Taken in concert, this was an incremental change.
On the verification, you're actually amending just the definition of ticket life, correct? Not any verbiage within 90.
Correct. Just reducing ticket life to 30 days. Any other discussion? Josh?
Jamie brought up the American Gas Association, white paper that recommended no longer than a 28-day ticket life. So that was part of the discussion. And then, Micah, I think it was Micah shared a comparative analysis of what other states' ticket lengths are, and we were kind of an outlier. Most of them were well below 45. I think it's us in Washington.
Yeah.
Just as context.
If there's no other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say the same.
Aye.
So we have 3 who are opposed. Does anybody abstain?
Megan also.
Megan is opposed as well, so 4 who are opposed. I believe we have the majority with the ayes, and so the motion passes. Thank you. Final discussion was held over OAR 952-001-0010, definition of non-invasive tools. The recommendation from the American Gas Association had included reference to hand tools. The committee had a robust discussion about how shovels are oftentimes the way in which utilities underground are compromised. So we did find that hand digging, literally scooping dirt with your hand, was probably a permissible way of digging and not damaging underground utilities. So there was a recommendation made by the committee to add to sub 13, including the use of hand digging, air cutting, vacuum excavation, or hydro vacuum excavation. So I would make a recommendation or a motion for the board to accept.
Jessica, before you go on, what I'm seeing on screen, it says hand digging, tools,
Tools is stricken.
Okay,
You probably can't see it very well because of the red.
it's
Yeah.
small on my screen.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, restating the motion for the board to accept the recommendation of the OER committee for revisions to AR 952-001-0010, sub 13, adding additional language to non-invasive methods.
So literally they need to get down and dig with their hands,
That it's an option,
but no shovels.
no shovels. Shovels are considered invasive still.
Then, in the committee, we would,
We have a motion by Jessica. Do we have a second?
Second, Micah.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Jessica, second by Micah to change OAR 952.001.0010 sub 13. Do we have any discussion? Okay,
I'll let the record reflect my previous comments.
Kevin,
Please. Same.
Tony,
Okay, just help me out with this. I don't necessarily, yeah, I can imagine if you're using a shovel and you're going down and putting your weight in the shovel, you're gonna damage wire. So, but the way you're describing it is shovel would not be considered a hand digging.
Correct.
Use of hand digging tools has been taken out. So by hand digging, you're talking about actually using your hand to shovel things.
like carpal tunnel, like.
Yeah.
Okay, so-
All guarded trowel, I mean, again, we're trying to define non-invasive methodology, right? What's non-invasive in excavation? Water,
I know-
air, and hands.
I know you guys probably think I'm just trying to be difficult, that's not it. But when it says hand digging, I think of a shovel. And so that's my only concern. I understand what you're saying, but am I the only one?
I thought the same thing as well when we first started discussing, but when you start talking non-invasive, then it's like, okay. That's not including the shovel.
But speaking from being there personally, you don't dig with your hand, especially in native soils on lines that have been there for extended period of time. I mean, you're not even gonna do more damage to the employee than you're gonna do to any facility. I could see adding the clarification, including the use of hand digging, hand tool, air cutting, using that. But if you're trying to eliminate the use of a shovel or a spade or even a hand trowel, honestly, I want to take everybody who said that and take them out to a pipe here. And I want you to hand excavate down to a utility, and you tell me how that feels on your hand,
right,
trying to work around it.
or yard, like, or even the for sale signs, like, they're not gonna go out there and just start digging with their hands, they're just gonna.
You can still use a shovel for digging.
Until you
will-
hit and then you're in trouble.
But let's be clear on what the language is doing here. The proposed language is changing the definition of non-invasive tools. What is a non-invasive tool? Today, the language reads, means using a practice to expose an underground facility that does not damage any part of the facility. So we're adding on to that language that calls out other forms of non-invasive tools, including the use of hand digging, air cutting, vacuum excavation, or hydro vacuum excavation.
But crossing out hand tool,
Tool was in the original proposed language, not in the rule today. That is not a part of today's rule at all. So the committee discussed whether or not a shovel or spade should be considered a non-invasive method and opted based upon their experience that was not a non-invasive method. So that would not meet the exception of a non-invasive tool. You can still use it, it's just not considered non-invasive.
so what happens when you use it? And you hit,
You fall under
but if
the,
I use my hands, I would be, I mean, that's the point, like. I mean, as a contractor, I'm trying to do my best to not hit, but following all the rules, but then when the hands are tied, like, we have to, they're not gonna hand dig, they're gonna be down there forever. It's gonna hurt, I mean, how, like, what, you got an 8-inch round that you have to do to
Yeah.
work?
just,
hand dig that.
let's make sure we understand where the
But we don't
definition,
have to hit,
let's make sure we understand where
I
the
get the
definition of non-invasive tool is used in our rule.
I get it.
Because it only appears once. So just a moment, let me get that information in front of me. So it appears exactly once in 952.001.0090, delay of excavation until response from facility operators. Down in sub 3, sub C, employ hand tools or other non-invasive methods either to determine the exact location of the underground facility or down to 24 inches beyond the depth of the intended excavation within 24 inches of the outside dimension of a marked underground facility. So defining hand tools as hand digging
Didn't it just say?
makes no, it does say in the preceding statement in the rule, employ hand tools or other non-invasive methods. So we're talking about what those non-invasive methods are in definition.
So all that it's essentially, when it says employ hand tools, you still may use a shovel, but just for the definition's sake, then it's outlining non-invasive tool and striking hand tools from that.
Because it would be redundant in this context. Now, if we use the word non-invasive methods other places, we may need to take that into
Where
consideration,
this
but in
would
this
affect-
context, it did not.
So where this would affect, like the scenario you're talking about, would have to strike employ hand tools from that portion of the rule for that to have any
Okay.
implication in the action that you're doing. Yeah, because then you would have to hydrojet, or you'd have to back X every utility you've ever crossed. So that would be I was a little confused at first, and I was in that meeting, so I apologize. But I know that we had talked about digging bars and other means that are very invasive. And so I think that would be, if we were to stop, maybe that's why I was a little confused, and appreciate you kind of explaining that a little bit more, but yeah, that'd be definitely a big change in the industry if we did not allow shovels to be able to.
Yeah, I'm not confused that way. I'm looking specifically at a place where the non-invasive method is necessary. So I'm within the zone where I think some facilities are. I'm just saying that when I read this, it looks like including the use of hand digging. That's what I envision.
But the spot where that is called out specifically states employ hand tools or other non-invasive methods. So you still have your skirt around with the employ hand tools in that. Tolerance, so, yeah.
Okay.
That's my interpretation of it.
That's what we thought it meant too, but you know, we gotta go through the rulemaking process and find out why we're wrong.
Any other discussion? So just a reminder, since that was nice and big.
Just since hand tools is considered non-invasive based on the law, by putting it in this definition, if you ever use that phrase again, non-invasive tools, you would have to add hand tools.
It's a great concept. Why don't you put that on a concept sheet and send it to the board to be referred to committee so we can talk about it.
So again, you have the motion by Jessica, the second by Micah to change 952.001.0010713. We've had our discussion. For all those in favor, please say aye.
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 For all those opposed, please say the same.
Aye.
For those who oppose, please raise your hand so Scott can take tally. Was there anybody online who was opposed?
That's on the hand, sorry. Yeah, anybody online opposed?
I don't see any comments. Was there anybody who abstains?
Thank you.
What's the count?
Yes, please.
6 opposed. I don't know, 13 present.
Let me know.
We have 7 ayes, 6 opposed.
That is the majority, so the motion passes. Yes, Nate,
Call for individual vote count.
Roll call.
roll call, okay. Scott, I will ask you to go through the names, and each person will call out their,
Kyle,
I oppose.
Micah,
4.
Nathan,
Opposed.
Alba,
report.
Johnny, opposed. Mitch,
Opposed.
opposed.
Yeah,
Kevin,
my sound, it's bad. Opposed.
Kevin,
Opposed.
Connor, Jessica,
Support.
Paul,
Opposed.
Rooster,
In favor.
Dale,
Approved.
Megan,
In favor.
is Andy here? Oh, Andy,
In favor.
did I miss anybody?
You get that one?
Yeah.
2 seconds.
5, 7, 4. Six against.
Again, that is majority, so the motion passes.
I just want to invite, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into that committee, there's a lot of prep work. I want to invite board members to come and show
I
up at that.
apologize, 7, 7,
Well, yeah, there's 3 here, or 6
7,
here,
7.
7.
Yeah,
So motion fails, you want to take it back to committee.
Now, we'll bring it back next month, committee voted, so we'll wait till there's more people in the room. But I do want to encourage everyone in this room to attend that committee. The conversations that are going on still indicate that you don't feel that the committee has made the right choices or considered the right things. Being present in those discussions and not waiting till we get in this room will hopefully help to avoid this going forward.
Did you have any others, Jessica?
No, that's it.
Okay. Next, we have our publicity committee by Scott. Is Scott with us today?
He is not, but I do have the slides, a couple of slides to show real quick. Okay, National Safe Dating Month is coming on. As I think I mentioned last meeting, we did a joint news release with Oregon OSHA, Oregon PUC that got some pickup. Did a live interview with the Lars Larson show that was shared in headlines. We started some ads with Royal Media and Alpha Media that you'll start seeing that continue beyond Safe Dating Month. And then Katie's been working closely with Grace and the OCC social creative team on social media posts. So thanks to OCC Creative for their work. And we'll just breeze through some of those examples here in a moment. They've also been working with Katie on positive response materials, and we'll share that one pager that she mentioned soon. It's in draft form. It's looking really good. And then also help with our website. So these are some of the example, and there have been changes made to these and edits, but just as an example of the type of content that we're posting on social media this month. This one was changed. It's a little busy, but there's an infographic attached to it for electrical safety, National Electrical Safety Month right now. About different types of tickets that can be submitted for different projects. Mother's Day post. Don't forget about that, by the way, we're coming up at the weekend for recognizing mothers. Just fun facts. And I think we're gonna change that to traffic speed, not miles. And then just generic posts there. Being a safe dating ambassador, white lining. spring. We have some themes for each season for where we think people are gonna be out in their yards and getting themselves into trouble if they don't call me for the day before contact. And Memorial Day, so that's just some examples of some of the content that we're sharing, and you always welcome ideas for other posts. For example, like today is OSHA's safety, break for safety or whatever it was called that Megan mentioned. I took a picture of our group presenting for that, so we could post something on that with the picture saying that we recognized OSHA's, and then we tag them, and so just partnership posts and sharing what others are doing as well, so that we have that network. Anything else, Katie? Okay. Any questions? Okay, that's all.
We'll move into our ad hoc committee reports. First up is budget audit and tariff committee, chaired by myself. I do not have anything, but Josh, do you have anything to share?
Nothing new. I think we've already worn that out.
And then we get into training and education with Mitch. Mitch, do you have anything to share with us? You're on mute, Mitch.
I can just say a few things. We've got, has a training class tonight, and we mentioned earlier, 5 o'clock, and then tomorrow at 8. We've got training in Coos Bay. I just opened a registration for our next in-person virtual training. And there's one of our lovely outdoor banners behind Kevin and Paul over here. I've got 5 in storage. Anybody in the room, like some who love to, I think we've got about 20 posted in our state. So we're trying to get more of the UCC folks involved. I think I shipped some to you, Brewster. So
I posted it in Washington, because I took one from the MUCC.
good.
And,
That's all anything else from training and education?
Hey, I'm back in. Sorry about that. I had a little bit of issue with my computer by the time I get back. But thank you, Katie, for giving the updates. And I know Josh has their updates for the new classes. Nothing too much to report on this one. It's just all the classes are going well. So far, we're looking at the attendance on the locating class also to see what we can do to improve and kind of catch them faster. But that's all I got so far. Sorry for the miss. This today was just, for some reason, the computer didn't cooperate with me today at all.
Thank you, Mitch and Kitty.
One other idea Kitty and I have talked about leading into National 811 Day is doing a giveaway with some hit kits. So we're looking into that cost, and if we get absorbed, the cost of a few hit kits that we might give out through trainings or for people that voluntarily participate in the online excavation safety 101 training. So
Can you
that
tell
they
me
do
what
that.
hit kit is?
Thank you. I didn't catch that either.
Hit kits.
What is that?
So that it's a package where if you have encounter damage out in the field, it has all of the tools for recording the incident, for shows measurements. They've got that along with the pictures. It's I think it's around $100. Kevin's familiar with them, and we've talked about it before. Rhino, I think, is the company, that's the industry standard that makes them. Does anyone else here use them?
I do.
Okay.
It's great. It's basically a couple triangles to show you where you can put it on where the locate is, where the damage occurred, and then a giant ruler, so you're not trying to take a picture of a little tape measure from point A to point B.
Thank you. All right, then we'll move on to the next one, policy and procedure committee by Jessica.
PMP committee has not met. However, this morning, as we were preparing for today's meeting, noting the number of absences in the room, I did a quick review of the bylaws and noted that we have an inconsistency between our PMP manual and our bylaws. For those of you that have a copy of the bylaws in front of you, under Article 2, Section 2, meetings, paragraph 4, providing there's a quorum, in quotes, is 7 members present. We're a board operating of 18 right now. When we're fully staffed, it's 20, so that number needs to actually be removed from bylaws. So if there's any objections, I would like to refer this matter to the P&P committee so that we can meet and make recommendations so you guys can act on.
So
changing your
I'm
mind.
sorry, Jessica, I didn't quite follow it. You said, like today, you said we're 7. How do you get that?
The bylaws has the word 7 members in it,
Oh, got it. Doesn't
defined in
matter.
quorum.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be there.
That's
Quorum
it.
should just be a simple quorum, which is 50% of the members of this board.
Thank you.
So that amendment needs to be made.
Just, 7 is defined in the ordinance, doesn't belong to this point.
Then we'll need to go to OARs as well.
Ordinance.
Let's
Statute.
right, it will need to go to that committee to make a recommendation, make statutory changes. But we can make the modification in our bylaws. Isn't reliant on one another.
Point of clarification, can you say that again? We can make changes to our bylaws that contradict statute?
The bylaws are operating documents of this board. The statute, that was written at a time when this board had a different nomenclature. So it's similar to removing the reference to the 1995 standard manual. That is a technical correction that we will need to make. The board can elect to operate based upon the realities of our situation. And while, yes, that may be in conflict with our statutory language, for all intents and purposes, that's the way the board operates today. So if you'd like, we can seek some DOJ guidance on that.
Yeah, my understanding is statute trumps rule.
That's not, PMP is not a rule.
It's,
It's our operating standards.
so I would think statute, if statute trumps rule, it would also trump operating procedures, but maybe
The statute trump it if you're going above and beyond the designated statute. So we have to.
A minimum of
statutes, statutes at the top of the decision matrix. And so what it says in statute, we can't make a rule that contradicts with statute. Because it'll always defer of what trumps what, statute's the top. So maybe we should, open it up and get a clarification on DOJ and about that, but I think they're pretty clear on us creating any policy, procedure, rule that contradicts with statute would be unenforceable. And we'd be actually liable if we.
So a simple, can I have a recall of the vote of the last item that went through on the OAR report, please?
7 and 7, yay and nay.
So technically it passed,
How does it technically pass?
because it had a quorum,
7.
and a quorum would be, if quorum's defined at 7, it passed.
It's a rulemaking process. This is an operational
Yeah.
consideration that the legislature passed down in the formation of this board, how to operate. There's a big difference.
And I'm getting confused because how does this 7-7 vote create a majority?
As long as a quorum, a majority, and if we're defining a quorum, a simple majority as 7, as long as there were 7 ayes, and there weren't more nays than there were ayes, that would have been considered passed.
I think I would have to see the verbiage on that, where that's allowable. It's not,
Yeah, it's 7 is required to hold the vote, but there's still not a majority.
right,
So it would not have passed. We had enough members to conduct the vote because there is a quorum.
yeah.
Yeah, quorum is just the ability.
But the definition is simple majority, 7 members. That's where you're running into the problem. In the bylaws, providing there's a quorum, 7 members present, a simple majority vote of the board members present at any meeting. You've now defined a simple majority as 7 members.
No,
That's the way the bylaws read.
that's the way you're interpreting the bylaws. That's not the way they read. Voting doesn't change based on interpretation. Voting is 50% plus 1 or a majority. So
And a simple majority is defined now as 7 members.
That's your definition. but
That's
show me-
what's in the bylaws. I'm reading to you what the bylaws say.
Okay, show me where. Show me what you're referring to that says. A tied vote is a pass vote as long as there's 7. Show me where it says that.
That's not, I'm giving you the definition of a simple majority, is defined by our bylaws. So
Simple, a quorum or a majority? What do you-
it's referencing both.
I guess I
that
don't
thing-
understand what we're talking about here. Why are we going in a circle? What are we trying to get to? Are you trying to say we need to revisit the vote, or are you trying to highlight inaccuracies? Like, what are we talking about? I'm confused.
The first issue is that we have well more than a quorum of 7 would indicate is a simple majority of this board. We had our board of 18.
Right.
A simple majority would be 9. The presence of this language in our bylaws conflicts with the facts of our board.
Mhm.
Whether that was predicated by a statutory obligation or not, our own bylaws do not operate in concert with the facts of our operations. So,
Nobody's disagreeing with that. What we're disagreeing with is, even though they do conflict, creating a rule and saying we're gonna trump statute, which we cannot do just because there's 18 members on this board. If it's in statute, that is statute. We can't create rules just because we say, well, it doesn't make sense. We have to change the statute. And so we can't do anything on our part that conflicts with statute, even though we see it's completely, even though it's completely obvious by what you're saying. There's 18 of us, there should be 21 of us. So majority should be however members are on board, however we define that. But we don't get to do that. That's not within our purview of power.
now you can amend your bylaw to take out the reference to 7 members. You can do that.
But it's, okay, you can do that, but then we're going against.
You're not conflicting with the statute if you don't put a number there.
The quorum is defined by the statute.
Right, and so when we go to have a vote and we reference that, but statute says one thing and we're operating on our bylaws, why are we creating something that conflicts with statute? Because at the end of the day, it's what's in statute that's gonna make the determination. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, it doesn't make sense. We have to follow what's in statute because that's the rule that we're governed by.
Nate, would it make more sense if the wording were to be that we need to have a simple majority with a minimum of 7 to make quorum?
We don't get to change the language of this. That's
It's
what
in
I'm
our
saying.
bylaws.
The bylaws are ours to change.
We don't get to do that.
Yes, you do.
Not when it conflicts with statute.
You're not conflicting with statute by removing a reference of 7.
What does it say in statute regarding quorum?
The board of directors shall meet at least once every 3 months at a time and place determined by the board. The board shall meet at such other times and places. Oh, that's wrong.
It's the one.
It is the function. Oh, no, sorry. The board of directors shall select one of its members as chairperson and another as vice chairperson for such terms, and with such duties and powers as the board considers necessary for the performance of the functions of those offices. A minimum of 7 of the members of the board constitutes a quorum for the transaction of business.
A minimum. So you can set your bylaw, whatever makes sense.
I think we should table this and refer to DOJ to get a ruling, because I don't think we're gonna get any sort of consensus without having it. Yeah, because I frankly disagree.
Okay, if we table this, who's gonna be checking with DOJ?
Josh,
I will,
Okay,
sorry, I was still thinking it through. Regardless of what we decide, we will want to make bylaws, policy and procedures manual consistent with the statute and with each other, which right now they're not, so.
okay, so we will table that discussion.
For clarification, they're not right now, because
They need clarity. It's, if you read the bylaws and the policy and procedures manual, bylaws specify 7. And then just this conversation here, you can hear the confusion over it, so we should have clarity and consistency between our documents. So, whether we change anything or not.
should be studied in committee so that we can come back with a recommendation from the board. Taking into account anything DOJ has to say. But there's gonna have to be revisions made one way or the other, and we'll get it in the committee when that can be worked on.
Clarification, was there ever a motion as a part of this? Because we wouldn't be able to table it if there wasn't a motion.
There's no motion,
There was never an original motion to make that change?
not yet.
Okay, then I would redact my tabling unless there's a motion, I can't table.
So is this an item that we want to move to committee?
I don't know, Nate, what do you think?
I don't think we should. I think.
So the board is gonna take this isn't gonna be, we're not gonna follow our own policy and procedure about a committee has to undertake the study, make a recommendation for the board to take action on. We're not gonna do that with this issue.
Well, can you direct staff to seek clarification prior to?
It would have.
Right.
We agree that the change is gonna, the documents have to be changed one way or the other. The inputs that we take into making those changes is a part of the committee's work. We're gonna keep it at the board level, that's fine, but I just want to acknowledge that we're not following our policy and procedure manual if we do that.
I guess. For clarification, for me, are you talking about this specific quorum issue or multiple issues that are in conflict?
The language relating to quorum that's in conflict between policy and procedures and the bylaws.
Okay, and so what you're asking me what we should do, my opinion is get one of them corrected? I guess I don't understand where you're going with it. Like, are you saying we need to visit statute and go down a process of adjusting statute? Or we need to go down a process of ensuring that our bylaws, policies, procedures reflect statute?
At this point, we don't know the answer to that. The first thing I would suggest
Okay,
is that P&P take this because they deal with bylaws and policy and procedure manual.
Okay.
Get the information from DOJ and come back to the board with recommendation with that information. Now, if that means that they're recommending a change to statute, that has to go to OAR. A different committee needs to undertake that.
For me personally, I don't feel like it's a valuable use of time to go down this effort to solve this quorum issue that's to me in statute, but it's not an Nate decision, it's a board decision. So if somebody on the board wants to make a motion, we can discuss it there, but I don't get to decide. Or direct.
If we don't take any action on it today, does it just remain in committee?
No, it's not in committee right now. It's sitting here in the board. We're just trying to get it to a committee where it can get worked. So if we don't want to do that, we don't have to.
Sorry, I missed that part.
So the issue is we're the policy and procedure committee report right now.
Correct.
And when I came in today, looked around the room, looked at the bylaws and said, that's weird. It says 7 members there. P&P manual says simple majority. So we've got a conflict between our two operating documents.
So what you're
Probably
looking at
clean
is
that
just
up.
for a recommendation to send it to you.
Send it to committee and let them figure out what needs to happen. And then bring it back to the board so we can approve it. Otherwise, the board can continue to hash this issue out directly.
I make a motion to refer these recommended or these. To refer this issue to the policy and procedures.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Kyle, a second by Johnny to send this to the P&P committee to hash out. Do we have any discussion? Further discussion?
I think before I get supported, I would like to see a scope of work. Or additional information.
I think this would be a great candidate for our concept form.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still in discussion, so what does that look like? Are you saying, so before we would make a proposal, we would do the concept form and then propose it?
I just have trouble referring something to a committee that we're not creating any guidance of what the reference to committee is. So we're saying, okay, committee, take this. What is the
Wait a
committee?
second, hold on. I thought we just asked Josh to go to the DOJ to get their take on it, to give us some guidance. So I'm lost at this point. I thought that's what we're doing, Nate.
That's exactly why I'm confused, Micah, is I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know why we're even going down this rabbit trail to begin with, if it's clear the order of, what trumps what, we already know, statute's the top. So why are we going down a process to try to go?
Well, I think why is because we have some concern, and if there's concerns in the board, whether they're confused about it, especially if they're confused about it, you know, or if they have a quarrel with it, we have to go down the proper method. So, and we've done it in the past, so if the DOJ can give us some guidance on it, then that can be, you know, from Josh to the committee, and I don't think we
And
need to.
that's my question on scope of work, like, are we asking DOJ to tell us what trumps what? Like, what are we asking DOJ? Like, DOJ, hey, we have policies and procedures and we have statute, which one is correct? I don't think we need to go to DOJ to answer that question. And so if we're gonna refer this to a committee, what are we gonna refer them and ask them to do? That's why I'm confused. That's why I'm like, hey, can we please make it clear what we're asking? Because to me, it seems obvious that we're asking a question that's already answered. We know which one is the decision maker, and that's statute. Anything that doesn't comply with statute and we have inaccuracies, then we need to ensure that policies and procedures are in alignment with statute. Now, if that's the work we're gonna do, great, but I don't know what we're doing. All we're doing is saying, here committee, take this work, but we haven't asked the committee what to actually do.
I agree that there's enough confusion here to, you know, for everyone. So what is your recommendation? I mean, outside of the current motion that's on the floor, I mean.
You turn to page 8 in the policy and procedure manual, and you read with me at the bottom of paragraph 3. A quorum is defined as a simple majority of voting members, but not less than 2. That conflicts with the language that we have in our bylaws. Providing there's a quorum, 7 members present, a simple majority vote of the board present at any meeting is sufficient to elect officers, pass any resolutions, or conduct OUNC business. These two documents don't work together. Now, there's an input, which is statute, and what needs to happen there. That's advisement from DOJ, but my recommendation is we send these two pieces of information, what's in bylaws and the PNP as it refers to a quorum, and tell the committee to figure out how to reconcile those two things and correct the language accordingly and bring a recommendation back for those corrections.
In alignment with statute.
In alignment with whatever the guiding principle is going to be here, whether that's statute or whether that's DOJ advisement, right? Because DOJ can come back and say, well, that's weird. It's a technical correction. You guys should update your laws based upon the way, or your rules based upon the way you actually operate today versus what statute. Now you've got DOJ to rely upon for making that decision. But again, all of those changes need to be done by the PNP committee. Either reconciling the language or adopting what DOJ says.
So Nate, you're not seeing an issue with what she just presented. I mean, so you're not seeing an issue with it. Just so I understand.
I'm seeing the issue that the two documents that we've adopted in-house don't reflect statute.
Okay. So then I think it's, okay.
I think technically they do, they just need clarity.
That's,
It's pretty clear to me, we need, as it reads, we need 7 members to vote, and then simple majority means you have 1 more than half. That's it, it's pretty simple, but our documents are not clear in that, and then committee has a different standard that only requires 2 members. So I think we could do a lot of house cleaning. If I were to go to DOJ, one of the first questions I'd ask is 7 appropriate, given that when we were creating them at 16 members in statute, now we have 21 when we're fully staffed. Should that change? Should there be a number, or should it be dependent upon how many are at a meeting with a minimum set? I don't know. Depending on how many seats are filled. So let's say we lost another 5 members, then we could run up against this problem.
so it does have the concept to flesh out what we're actually trying to get resolved and figured out. Maybe the best place to start on this conversation.
Yeah.
Because. Yeah, okay.
Kevin,
My experience with asking the DOJ for interpretations is that they are going to go through the law. And they're going to curve it to the law, and they're not going to speak on what was intended. As a primary. So how you ask the question, might create more work than necessary. Will be an interesting take back to go to the DOJ about how these questions are framed to the DOJ. May not provide the clarity that you're seeking. And that's the point I wanted to make.
Johnny.
Sorry. Are you?
I think the other part of this is that, okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding this. But the board and or the executive board can assign a project or job or whatever to the committee, right? An executive board, so the chair could assign the project, you know, in other words, if there's a concern about this issue, the chair could go to Jessica as the chair of the committee and say, would you please look into this? Am I right on that?
No. The PMP says that the board has to direct work to committees.
Okay. All right, so if the board is looking at this issue and saying there's obviously some misunderstandings around this issue, we just put together a proposal to push this to the committee to look into. Josh is on that committee, and as part of that process, he can request at least some input on DOJ on that portion of it. I'm not sure why don't we start there, and then the only concern I have is that you have enough on your plate. You don't want to add more than you need, but if this is something that needs to be clarified, start there. Let the policy, that doesn't mean the policy and procedure committee may have to look at this and say, okay, yeah, we have an issue, but we also have to address the statute. Now, I happen to look at it a little differently, but I read it as 7 is the minimum. Maybe we have to make that 5 or whatever. But well, I don't quite understand. Why don't we let the committee take it over?
so to remind
Because they
you,
can't pass it until
we
it's
do have a
voted.
motion by Kyle and John did second that motion to move this into committee. And we're still in the discussion phase.
So let me read the motion as I understand it. That might help. So Kyle moved to refer the issue of quorum and majority in policy procedures and bylaws to committee for alignment and clarity.
So on that motion, is there any more discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote. All those who approves, please state aye.
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 I,
Anybody who opposes, please state the same.
Aye.
So we have just the 2 who oppose.
You opposed?
And is anybody abstained? Okay, motion passes.
I'd like to clarify, I'd like to abstain on this one.
So one who opposes, one who abstains.
Correct.
Okay. So this item will be moved to the committee for them to discuss and have to bring back to the board.
Yeah.
Jessica, did you have anything else for PNB?
Nope.
So just to clarify again, is Josh directed to address the DOJ at this point? Or is that gonna come from all the committee?
Could have to come from the board.
And it's part more discussion. We're directing Josh.
The board did direct them, is that standing?
So, yeah, any, so the instructions to follow up with this will be for Josh to check with DOJ to find out.
Cool.
To receive clarification on inconsistencies between statute,
Yes, thank you.
policy, procedures, and bylaws.
Nate.
Jessica, can I get a clarification of what's in the policies and procedures about board direction? Like, how does that work? I thought you just said, for clarification where I got confused is, we can't direct Josh, the board has to direct Josh to do something. But what do our policies and procedures say is the process for the board to act to direct?
That's just part of our board business.
It's not,
It's not, I mean, it's specified in our bylaws, out of the board. Shall have an exercise, and shall exercise all powers allowed by law, and shall have full authority to act on behalf of the OUNC in its management and control, not only the OUNC business, but of all of its assets subject only to these bylaws and the laws of the state of Oregon. So through that provision in our bylaws, the board directs Josh as our only employee actions to take, and does that during our standard board meeting. There's no formal process to it.
because I guess my question is, can any board member direct Josh to do work? Or when it says board, does that mean a consensus of the board has to agree to put Josh towards work? Like, it's that,
We've never operated that way,
right?
which is why we have.
Well, we've operated in both. That's the key.
In recent times, the parking lot of lists of items that go to staff at the following of a meeting, that has not required board action. So practice has been, we haven't taken an affirmative motion to direct staff. If there's a desire by the board to change the policy for how to do staff activities and implement a procedure to that, we would need to do that work in the PMP committee, I might add.
Yeah, and I think my concern is raised if we start going quarterly, which we've already approved, and individual board members want Josh to do something without the other board being aware, any of us under the current concept could say, hey, Josh, I need you to do this. And as a board member, Josh has to do it, but the rest of the
Board hasn't had an opinion on that. Yeah.
Right.
And that is already, right? So,
right, so is
but
it-
I would think in the confines, and for those of you that participate on other boards, help me out here, but I would think within the confines of our public meeting, direction given to staff is considered, you know, unless somebody speaks up and says, no, that's not something we should be doing, that's considered, you know,
Consensus board direction.
yeah, a direction from the board. Now, if we want to, again, implement a procedure around that, have anything to say, Josh, are you familiar with anything that was used, maybe the Dairy Association in that regard?
For assigning work to the executive director.
Yeah.
It was pretty similar to the way we're handling it now. You know,
Oh, sorry, no, that's silence.
On two other boards I sit on, it's the executive committee that assigns work to the executive director. And my concern is just any of us can call Josh and say, Josh, you need to prioritize your football towards this or do this without anybody, there's no check and balance system with that. And I think that's a bad direction for our executive to be at the whim of 16 people.
Yeah.
21.
And what I'm concerned about is, I thought we had that capability before the executive board could direct Josh. I thought we were there. And
We
that could
did.
have changed policy and procedures, but I thought you had the ability. And the reason why I'm thinking that is because I remember an issue coming up with the costs involved with DOJ. So when I was a treasurer, there was somebody had sought some opinion from DOJ. There was a cost, and that's where it came about. Somebody, a board member asked for it, and everybody voted, decided, you know what, stuff like that should go through the executive board. Either it comes from the chair or the vice chair. I thought we had that.
Johnny is correct. Johnny is correct. So if we can look back through our resolutions, you'll find that. And that's either on the tail end of Scott's reign or right after I took over. So, and I remember that, Johnny. So we do have it already in effect.
Which I think all the points brought up is that.
Yeah, I I think it puts our executive director in a really bad spot, and it also creates a lot of.
But you also don't need a motion for everything. If it's requested of the chair and everybody thinks that's okay, that could just be direction from the chair. If that's what's available. I don't know if that needs to go to P&P to have that directly outlined in policy and procedures before we operate that, right?
Right.
That's.
So in that case, we would have to be in a public meeting before any work of a board could be assigned to Josh,
I mean,
outside of the
the
executive.
inference of our PMP and our bylaws is exactly that, the work of the board is happening in this public meeting, right? So it's daylighted what we're doing. You would need to write some specific language under duties of the board that outlines how work gets referred to the executive director, which, you know, we can certainly do. I don't have any example of that offhand.
Is the concept being done? Concept paper?
Yeah, the draft is done. It's not formally finalized, but it's for all intents and purposes done.
Well, I'll submit my request through there for clarification,
Okay.
because I think it is something we need to make sure we're tracking, especially with Josh, just finding topics that people are aware of and the board's aware of. So I'll dive into that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty typical for the executive director to have operational authority to keep the doors open, keep things moving. So not every task has to be assigned by the board for the, I have to operate some autonomy and prudential judgment on what the priorities of the day are. But as far as bigger projects, that's where that form could come in as well. If somebody comes to me with something that needs to go before the board, I could be like, I'm glad to help you with that. Let's take a step back and submit it formally and bring it back to the board. And then I'm glad to take action on it. I can also provide kind of a status of where I'm at with projects and priorities right now, just so the board has visibility to the bigger picture of what's not being done right now. In addition to what we are doing.
We can adopt it by a resolution tonight, by the way. We have the ability to enact a board resolution that would outline how work is referred to the executive director versus making a change to the PB, which might be a more meaningful way of making that change. Because it would be a resolution attached to our bylaws.
Yeah.
Okay, if everybody is ready for lunch and is out there, please getting it ready, we will take a break for, I want to say 35 minutes and come back at 1 o'clock.
You have to hit it harder than that.
Nice. Wait, are we reopening?
Josh, do you want to pause the recording?
Yes. Awesome.
I like for myself. And then called you twice now. And I love a good Irish road.
You're fine. My grandparents were born in Ireland, so it's pretty easy for me.
Yeah, I just have to get all the paperwork.
We're doing the same thing for my. Business function.
Having two passports is nice, dual citizenship.
I'll get mine once. We have this, and then we do both our kids.
USC can't answer that.
You have your US passport.
If you have the
and your
pass, so that's the one I have press off for in the future. And you all walk into a bar together. Let me do it.
So we have good time, would you choose, I'll refer to you.
Yeah. And I've already got my own. And situation.
Continue the meeting, so we can get out of here a little bit quicker. I learned during the break that we need to go back to the OAR committee. There was a couple of people who may want to change their vote. I'm not sure what the protocol is on this. How to go about this,
I can provide some clarification.
please.
So if you were on the, this one would be maybe not. Because to go out back and revisit, you have to be on the side that was approved. And change your vote. If you were on the side that did not prevail, you can't change it, you can't revisit it. So, I'll just look at that. That's right. If we want to go to the next thing, I can look it up to see.
Okay, while you're looking that up, we will continue with Kevin on the notification boundaries committee.
Yes, there you go. So this committee hasn't had a full public meeting or meeting to discuss the ask and the objective for this. I mean, we're just gonna look at notification boundaries that are being submitted to the one call center. Topic or point of concern or interest, I should say, is one of the reasons why the in and out ratio is going down is perhaps that more utilities are reshaping their boundaries to accommodate our new system, which gets down to a 10-foot, 5-foot radius. So I'm still, the last board meeting, I did ask if anyone had some thoughts or suggestions as fact finding. Please send them to me, Josh, or Kitty. As I'm still trying to put some information together. I don't have a scheduled meeting for this yet. I'm still working on some data sets to see if there's some positive leads for the group to look at and possibly make a recommendation to the board. And with that, I have nothing else to report.
Okay. When you are ready to set the meeting, will you be notifying the whole board for those who are interested?
I'll just be going through the process that we have for all the other
Okay,
community meetings. So, yeah. I
thank
will
you.
rely on the help of
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Nate, have you found it?
I'm just getting there right now. We can.
I saw a note that says you can, in the same day you can change consideration.
I think you can, I think it's really, since there was a tie, if there was an approval or a whatchamacallit, then there would have to be a person who was on the winning side, say they're wanting to revisit it and change their vote.
I just read that once you move on to the next item of business, it's not possible to change an individual vote.
Unless you're on the winning side and ask for a reconsideration or.
Yeah, you may have to reconsider the entire vote rather than change an individual vote.
Right.
Okay,
So we're looking.
and if it was the item that was the tie voting, this is something that we can bring back to the next meeting, correct? So we will move on then to the Oregon Utilities Coordination Council report. Kyle, do you want to say outgoing words?
I don't have much, but I know that the next meeting is in June. In Coos Bay, so I'm early for that one. And it's been a pleasure to sit on this board and get to know everybody. So I don't have any words of wisdom. So hopefully you guys will continue your great work and prevent damages. So I will think of all of you fondly when I eat up there. Thanks you all.
Yeah, we appreciate having you on both boards and your insights have been greatly appreciated as well.
Thank you. I would just like to say, thank you for representing WCC. Formally, so appreciate that. It's fun, but it's also an extra chore, so thank you.
Scott, was there anything else that we needed for the WCC to update?
Just that we are working on a document of expenditures that we're putting out. We've asked all of our councils to submit to us how they're spending their money and on what, so we're going to have that prepared maybe by next month to present to the board.
Yes. Give you a quick glimpse of it.
Yes.
And this is a huge thank you to Alba for creating this spreadsheet. We'll have 2022 soon, and then updating, getting 2023 logged in. So this will be something you guys can all take a look at. It's tracking, for example, Klamath Falls held a contractors breakfast in April. How many people? It was 75 people plus the cost, and then you can see where the money is going.
Katie, if you want to go to the other tab, the yellow one, just to the left, events of 2022. That has a good start of the councils who have reported back to me. So we've got more than half of them that have reported back on what they spent in 2022.
Okay.
And then hopefully before this next meeting, I'll have the rest of those reported back. I'll reach out to the ones who have not reported back yet. Again, those are the ones that are highlighted in blue. So I'll reach out to them before, well, after this meeting, trying to get their information as well. I know Melher probably is zero across the board because they actually disbanded their committee this past year, this spring, and returned all their funds to the OUCC, which those funds were put into the additional funds to be used throughout the whole state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so, two things of note for the vote as the chair or acting chair. You wouldn't have voted. And when it would affect the vote, which could make it a tie, you could have voted. But when it's voted a tie is considered a failure. So if a member who voted in opposition would like to call, they could call to reopen that issue, but it could only be a person who voted in opposition. It couldn't be a person who voted in favor. So if there's a person who voted in opposition, you voted in opposition, okay, so then there's a process. Yeah.
And then did they take her vote away then? He voted
So,
in favor.
Yeah, so it would be a 7-6 vote
Okay.
against. Yep.
And then if he switches, it'll be 6-6. Oh, right, no,
Yeah, it would be 6-6, because you would no longer be.
If her vote goes away, it would be 6-6.
yeah,
Then all those votes would come into play and it would be.
okay.
then she could break a tie.
Ah.
Or that.
So, let me get to that next part of the.
Because he didn't vote here.
Yeah, so he was on a vote that essentially succeeded. And now he's saying, I want to reconsider that vote.
Was it 7-7 with all those votes? So it would have been 7-6. So if he switches, then that 7 disappears. That's the next one. So that's 7-6 in favor.
You're right. Yes, you're right.
But we have to go through the process.
Yep, we gotta go through the process.
And somebody else may change.
Yep.
Once you don't have to stick with the same vote you voted for originally.
Right.
You can. So I'll get there now that I'm clear.
Okay. Moving on from OUCC, next we have National Energy News, Northwest CGA and open discussion. Is there anything there to be reported?
So we just want to note that the users group is officially announced September 26th and 7th, I believe, in
26 to 28.
26th to 28th, yeah, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So Of course, we pay for one member of the board to come, but all are welcome. And basically the expense of travel is the only thing that's all you need. Basically all the meals are covered during the event and there's no charge for the session. So all are welcome. You know, if I can take my OCC hat off and put my OUNC hat back on. I thought this was the most valuable of all the conferences that I went to, as a board member especially, but even in damage prevention, it's just an opportunity to speak to all of OCC's customers in 18 or 19 states now. Representatives from those will come and share what it is that they're doing in each of their individual states, and let's get a look at what is kind of coming out from OCC. So,
And second that.
yeah, it's good. So great opportunity.
Been around the area 51.
Is that any just? It's right
What was
where,
the date for that? September 26th, 7th and 8th.
So since we have one more meeting before, or is there two meetings?
It's the
before that?
week before, we'll be at Eagle Crest. The 20th and 21st of September for OUCC, OUNC.
We have to decide who our person is, what's going.
Right.
Yeah, know where you're going.
So we should decide who all is interested to go at this meeting. And then the next meeting, make the final decision. So is there anybody who has interest in going?
What were the dates? 26 and 27?
26, 27, 28.
The Tuesday,
Oh,
Wednesday,
September,
Thursday.
right?
Mhm.
That's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Still area 51's in Nevada.
But Bud's funny. He's always come up with 50.
Just making sure online, can you hear us all? Is anybody online interested in going?
I don't see Mitch on here, but I think he's expressed interest before.
Megan would like more info.
Okay.
Josh, you can send that out by
Yep.
email. And then if anybody else expresses interest, just let Josh know,
Perfect.
and we'll bring that to the board next time.
Alba, can I just ask the group again, because an e-shot went out on this as well in the last week or so. Mine always goes into my spam folder. I'm just curious if board members are receiving these emails from the call center that come from Minnesota. No. Okay.
What about the board packet this week?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's board packet.
Did anyone not get it? Okay, good. We're half of the way there.
When you send that, will you also attach the link to the financials? Because it will kind of. I know it's out there, but it's always going back and find. Sure. If you could just put that in your.
The table of contents has the financials as a link, the front.
Oh, in
It's
the.
on the very first page. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. I think I. Oh, bookmark it too. I could bookmark it. And I just went against my own direction of giving direction.
Nate, you found that yet?
I have, yeah.
Okay, good.
Were you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so you just need to say, Madam President, I move to reconsider the vote on the motion relating to X, Y, and Z. I voted against that motion.
Madam Acting Chair, I would like to make a motion to reopen, reconsider
The vote on the motion
the
relating.
vote on the motion, which is already taken place,
Related to.
related to,
Then 52.001.0010 subsection
you
13.
read my mind better than my wife.
And then you say, I voted against that motion.
I voted against that motion. And hence, again, I strongly,
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion to reopen?
Go ahead, Paul. You have discussion.
That discussion is after understanding exactly, and I apologize to the committee because I respect the committee's time on all our committees and that they review and battle this out. And that's why I'm pretty much in favor of the committee's recommendations. Here I was strictly caught myself off guard in trying to relate non-evasiveness techniques to the tolerance zone and so forth. And really what they're applying to is a definition of non-invasive techniques to where you would still use hand tools as we normally do in that as a precaution within the tolerance zone, but clearing up if we say a non-evasive techniques, using that would even be an underground radar, all the things that you really are above and beyond to be safe not to hit something. And because of reconsidering that and the definition aspect versus the application aspect of it, I would like to change my vote in favor of or not against those changes.
I think those comments are for when we reconsider the motion. This is just to open up the option to have a conversation about it. But I get what you're saying.
Even giving us the explanation for why.
Yeah.
Yes, now we know why, so now we can vote.
So after the discussion, all those in favor to reopen, please state aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please state the same.
Aye.
Anybody who abstains?
I'm going to abstain.
Johnny abstains.
Anybody online abstaining or objecting?
No comments coming up. Nobody's speaking.
Roll call.
I think we had a majority.
Did we?
Yes.
I only have 3 against, 1 abstaining.
We can do a roll call if it's warranted.
How many are there? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 3. Okay, then no. I rescind.
Okay. So motion passes. We will reopen this vote. This discussion item. Yes.
If I could, I'll take this what I stated. So what I stated before is what I stated again, my misunderstanding of the intent of redefining the definition of non-invasive techniques versus the actual practice and use of non-invasive techniques. And that's where my quandary came into, but after being explained. Should have taken this feeling, which is, that's why we have committees to bring the recommendations for. And they already pounded this out in committee, so with that said, I would like to change my vote where I was opposed to in favor of the suggestions of the committee. That's all that needs to happen.
No, I
We
think
have
we
to
have.
We need to vote to revote. In case anybody else wants to change their mind as well, to either side.
Yeah.
So do
So now we just re-voted. We made the motion to revisit it. That was
Now we have to
approved.
put the motion back on the table.
Right.
So,
as a new motion or? do
yeah,
I read
it's
that?
it's a new motion. It'll be the same.
Yep.
Resuscitation. Move for the board to approve the committee's recommendation for language amending OAR 952.001.0010 sub 13. To move for approval to move into rulemaking.
Second. For sure, second.
We have a motion by Jessica, a second by Brewster to amend 952.001.0010 sub 13. We have any debate or discussion?
For the record, can you copy and paste my concerns about public meeting? Scott?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Already did it.
Any other discussion?
I don't know that it has to be said this time again, but since it's a new motion, I'll just mention that in my opinion, the wording, to me, gives the impression that I can use, hand tools. So that's my only concern with it.
If I may, Madam Chair. I'm gonna read to you the section where non-invasive tools is stated, which hopefully should alleviate your concern, Johnny. Now, so I can find it. Yeah. Employ hand tools or other non-invasive methods, either to determine the exact location of the underground facility or down to 24 inches beyond the depth of the intended excavation within 24 inches of the outside dimension of a marked underground facility. So hand tools is stated in the rule. We're giving definition to quote, other non-invasive methods, which include hand digging. Simply providing more definition to that non-invasive tools. Hand digging is called out in the only place where this is referenced. So I don't know that that's an issue, but I can appreciate it if you're still concerned.
Yeah, but where I'm gonna go with this is, there's probably a better place to say this, but we don't always have to agree on everything. We don't always have to vote affirmative or on everything. I think it's good that you have people that are voting against, because then it shows that we have a true democratic site. Okay, we've all had a chance to review it and vote on it. Just because I have a concern about the wording of it, doesn't mean that I don't appreciate how much effort was put into by the committee, okay? But sometimes I think that if there are people that are concerned about the wording, then if we're seeing that here in this group, then we're gonna see it in the field too. As far as the vote goes, it is what it is. But I think sometimes something like that, maybe there's a different way to word it. I'm not always the best wordsmith, I'm not saying that, but you obviously, you and I disagree on how that wording is clear. And so that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate where you guys are coming from and how much work you put into it.
The point of the process that we are in is not the final words that are going to appear in our rule. This is simply for this board to agree that we see a revision necessary to move this idea, this concept, to a formal rulemaking process where stakeholders will have an opportunity to comment and hopefully suss out their concerns. We are not making a final decision of rule change here today. We're making a decision as a board. We need to do something about this. We need to provide a forum for public comment. That forum for public comment of rules that we've decided we need to change is formal rulemaking. That's the next step. That's all we're voting for here today. This is not don't ever feel like anything that comes out of the OER committee is the end all be all on what the language is going to be, because it is far from that at that point. It's just a recognition by this board that we need to take action and helping to move it in that process.
I guess I would need a clarification on that, because once we adopt it as the board and we go into official rulemaking, the public has an opportunity to provide input, and then if we come back and change that verbiage, then we start the process over.
No, it goes through final, once we say it goes into rulemaking, then the stakeholder input that occurs in that rulemaking, that's where the changes happen, and we go to final rulemaking based upon that process. We lose control of it once we send it to rulemaking. Honestly, we do, because we have to take in stakeholder input and provide a response to that. But that is how administrative rules are developed. They're never developed in a vacuum.
And I guess that's my concern is if we approve this, then we turn it over and we don't have an opportunity to revisit that.
Oh, no, you do, because that's a part of the stakeholder process, right? So when we're sitting at a traditional rulemaking workshop, Public Utilities Commission is one example I will use. Proposed rules come out. There's a workshop that's held where stakeholders come in and say, you know, that word doesn't make sense, maybe if it said this. And staff can look at that and say, yes, that makes sense, or, oh, no, this is what we were really trying to do, what would make more sense here, right? And you hash out that language, and you present them a final rule for consideration. It's open for a comment period, and then you go to adoption of that rule after so many days in full, right? There is a more full process where we continue to refine it. But we seem to be hung up on making sure the words are perfect. Yes, we want them to be as close to what we intend as possible once we send it into rulemaking, but recognize lots of revisions are going to take place in rulemaking, and that's just what that process is meant to be.
So it would be helpful if I understood, so I guess I need more clarification. So if we vote and approve this today, a board member can come back and submit a request for change of that rule.
Absolutely, in the formal comment period during rulemaking, yes.
In the process, well, I think I have to ask my full question to get an answer. We can come back and say, well, this verbiage makes more sense during the rulemaking process, and we can adopt that new verbiage if there's no public comment.
We're correct, it will be put through a hearing. It depends on what happens in the rulemaking process, right? Josh can speak to what the outline of it is, and it would probably be helpful to see a workflow. Because I think there's a lot of confusion about what that means, but we will issue a notice of proposed rulemaking, a copy of the proposed rules, receive comments in, come back together and say, okay, we received these comments on our proposed rules. Here's the language we've gotten proposed. What do we want to do about it in our formal rule? If we're not going to adopt what the comment is, we'll have to provide an explanation for why we either adopted it or didn't adopt it and move to our final rulemaking. So this board has more work to be done here. And final rulemaking is we issue final rules. If the comment period is open and we receive no objections, then the rules are adopted. That's my basic understanding of being a rules coordinator. But Josh would have to give us more information about that. Again, this is not the last step in the process. This begins the process for us.
I guess I'm still confused on what we're deciding then. We're just deciding to send it to the official rulemaking process.
Yes,
But we're not deciding on the verbiage.
we're deciding on the verbiage that will start that rulemaking process. But what the final rules will be only after a public comment period.
And then during that process, we as the board can go in and adjust the language without public comment.
We take in, go with Josh.
With public comment.
So if we approve this today and there's no public comment, the board has no opportunity to say, well, I think this verbiage might look bad.
No, because you have the public comment period when we issue the rulemaking notice to come back.
Yeah, and there's an opportunity to amend it throughout the rulemaking process. It's about a 90-day process that includes notification, hearing, and then assuming that we get attendance. But I would envision that would be a part of one of our board meetings.
Because my fear is that we submit rules to be considered. The public views them, makes comment on those. We as a board say, I think we could word this better with less confusion. And then we submit that, it feels like we're being disingenuous at the start of the process. And we're not going through a good faith process. If there's half the board who's listening to this today is confused, it just feels like, I agree with Johnny's point that, why are we putting something that half of us are confused on and we're the designated people as experts on this issue? And so if we're at that point and it's so close, to me, I think it still warrants the process of taking it back to the committee and getting to a point where we're not having people in this room saying, I don't get it. Or I think once it hits the paper and goes there, I think it's just challenging. So I think it's disingenuous on us to go down this process today. Not that it's not warranted and not that it's not appreciated. I completely agree with John. It's not an attack on the effort of the process that's gone through. I think it's just still not there yet. And I would like to make sure it gets there because I'm still frankly confused.
Yeah, I guess I would just say if there are reservations, this process, we don't want to take something half-baked to the process. If it's ready for prime time, we should have. Not every, like Johnny said, not everyone has to be in lockstep agreement on this, but we should have at least from the board before we take it to the role process. It's not intended to be like a rough draft. That point, it should be the board saying this is what we believe is in the best interest of our organization and of the damage prevention mission.
Kristen?
I think the confusion issue came more from convoluting the definition and the location in which it's stated in the handbook, more so than the exact way it's worded, because if you were to read the definition and then go and read the place in which the definition is used, it distinctly defines the two. So I feel like, yes, we're confused because we're looking at it a very holistic view, whereas someone from a public standpoint that's going through the standards manual is gonna see it in two completely different places and have no question as to what that means. Because it is defined both non-invasive methods and the use of hand tools. So all that was doing was trying to strike the hand tools out of the definition, because the only place in which it's used has hand tools defined anyways. So that's where I think that we've got the issue a little convoluted, was not looking at it from the exact way that it's put into the standards manual and trying to look at it from these two things mashed together. Just food for thought.
Yeah, no, it's helpful. Very helpful.
I want to clarify my comments about public involvement. As you guys go through this process in the future, I would strongly recommend the group review the public meeting requirements as defined by the DOJ and make sure that your public notice reflects those requirements. My comment today was on this agenda item, there was only a general report. Not that the board was considering all of the changes to the OARs. If you don't follow the public meeting rules, someone can challenge you on this. And then you have to start all over. So what my comments are is just to make sure that you don't have to go and redo the work, because Jessica has put in a tremendous amount of work, and I echo Johnny's sentiments is that my comments are geared towards A, the public has a right to participate, and B, that we need to make sure that we do it in a manner that insulates the board from challenge when you go forward doing the changes to the OARs, ORSs, et cetera. And so having the involvement of the DOJ, having public involvement, they're all part of the process that are defined in public meeting law rules. So whether my interpretation of them is correct or not, I would just encourage everybody to go forth and read those to make sure that you're all up to date on what those requirements are. And so, Josh, I would also recommend that you provide a little bit more context on the agendas so that people that are interested in this have a little bit better transparency into what is occurring during the meetings. Does that help? Sorry, I didn't mean to lecture, but that's kind of I tried to guide the board this direction for a long time. So.
We have a motion on the table and we've had our discussions and now it's time to vote. For those who are in favor of changing 952.001.0010/13 and are in favor of it,
Please roll call this one.
I think.
Nate's kind of funny. He's looking at it.
So there's 2 points because it could come down to you.
Uh-huh.
And so if we do
I'll call for a roll call vote.
no, we can either do a paper vote, a ballot vote, and then a paper ballot vote, and you can vote, or we can do a roll call vote, and then you can determine if you want to break a tie or make a tie.
Okay. Wasn't there 14 of us here, and if my vote doesn't count,
Only in
If I'm-
case of a tie.
right, but if there's 14 of us here. And my vote doesn't count, that means there's 13 and there could not be a tie.
But you can force a tie.
Your vote counts, especially as a tiebreaker.
So I
As a
guess what I'm saying
tiebreaker,
is, if you want to. We're gonna have to take a paper vote if you are planning on thinking that your vote may need to make a tie. Because if you don't vote in the process and it's 6-7, you wouldn't break that tie.
Right.
So you have to decide how you want to move forward on that, because this one actually,
Doesn't the motion fail if it's a tie anyways?
it does fail if it's a tie.
But if you want the other way,
Right? So, just for clarification, so that's a decision. you
Does
have to-
everybody have a piece of paper?
Well, it's
I
her
have sticky
decision.
notes.
It's all this decision, how she wants to proceed.
We should probably do a paper vote. And then perhaps the people who are online can send a message directly to me, not the whole group.
You understand to me?
Oh, send them to Scott, yes, and let Scott do all Italian.
God, do we need to indicate on our paper vote who voted, like if it's a vote of.
Yes, so, yeah, name and yes or no. How about that?
And
Yeah, he'll have to announce.
Okay.
Are you ready for anyone?
Oh,
I like yellow.
Okay.
Candy, Megan, Micah.
Thank you.
Mitch. Need direct message me.
All
that ask for it to be direct. Wait, Mitch is not here
The secret ballots.
Okay.
Somebody write the name for that.
Yeah, you just have to put your name.
Oh, Scott is, all right.
Thank you.
And then whoever's talent has to actually say who it is and it has to be announced.
Maybe we won't have their phone since are they direct messaging you all the?
It's Scott.
Oh, it's got it.
Yeah.
Rules.
I was curious how that. Yeah,
That's pretty interesting how
it's.
the chair makes the decision.
Yeah, it's interesting how much power the chair actually has in the rule of order.
I have a yes, with no name.
On pink.
Kevin.
So is somebody on this side?
Silly with no name.
That's right. Yours?
Yeah,
Dale?
I didn't put my name on it, no.
That's what I said, I needed, yeah.
There you go.
See how I figured that out? Okay. In the manner of the dissolution of oh.
It's worse already.
No. Already again.
Judge guy.
Four, so I'll read the fours first. So four, we have Andy, Megan, Paul, Brewster, Jessica, Connor, Alba, and Dale. Against, we have Kevin, John, Nate, and Kyle. And then online. That includes online. Mitch is not here, so. So that's, the motion is for.
Motion passes.
8-3.
As it is stated, the motion has passed. Next on the agenda is old business with the strategic plan review being first.
Strategic plan review will be moved to the June meeting in Coos Bay.
And next is board recruitment status.
I covered that in the last executive director's report, but if anyone has questions, my only plea is that if you know of anyone who might be interested and who could serve as a good board member, please let me know and we can give them all the links and information. Try and make it easy. And just encourage them to attend a couple of meetings to get a flavor for what we do and how we operate. We'll try not to scare them off.
Moving on to new business, we have the ad hoc committee on damage research and data.
I think we're good there. I did read in the policy and procedures manual when we had that discussion that the chair can appoint me as an interim chair. So until we decide who that chair is, you could appoint me, and then when we convene the first meeting, we could vote on a chair potentially, or yeah, it would at least keep things going.
I think in the best interest, that would be the best way to go. We will appoint you as interim chair until we have.
On board somebody.
Yes.
Great.
Is there any other new business by anybody? Anything for the good of the order?
So, did Scott say that he could, that they paid for one person to go to Albuquerque, is that what you said?
The OCC pays for one person, the board can
So
go.
I want to sure that I'll just pay for minimum, so you can have one person go if you want.
Okay, and again, the board can pay for it as well.
Yeah.
But you're certainly welcome to.
So in the good of the order, we have our recognition for Kyle. I'm not a speech maker, I'm sorry. I would let Josh do that.
Sure. Well, personally, I want to thank Kyle for making time. He has always had a good voice a critical voice for things that don't seem to make sense or things that need more research, but he also has a solution-oriented mindset that he keeps us moving forward. He reached out to me when we were having struggles with the last budget process and said he was willing to roll his sleeves up and get to work. And it wasn't just lip service. We had phone calls. He met in person, took time out of his day to come to me and meet at the Mid-Oregon Construction Safety Summit, talked about the budget, went through the materials, gave his perspective. So his experience and expertise, not only in damage prevention, but just in, as you've heard today, public meetings and things like that. Although I do disagree in part with what you just said a moment ago, but we'll cover that later. But I do appreciate that perspective. You're going to be missed. I'm very sorry to miss your presence both on OUCC and OUNC. And I wish you all the best in this new position. It sounds like an exciting opportunity, managing multiple forests and water staff, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We should do a photo op with you somewhere here.
How about we do it after the meeting?
Yep.
Since we're almost done. Have to do it after.
Okay, perfect.
And speaking of meetings, our next meeting is at the Mill Casino in North Bend, Oregon, just outside of Coos Bay. And that will be on June 14th.
I should probably qualify my disagreement with what Kyle said. In principle, I agree that every motion, every detail should be included in the agenda, and every good faith effort is made to include that. But in the public notice requirement under ORS 192640, it states that the notice shall include a list of principal subjects anticipated to be considered at the meeting, but this requirement shall not limit the ability of the governing body to consider additional subjects. So it's the spirit of it is to include everything and anything, and I think we've come a long ways from when I started to including a cohesive board packet along with the agenda and with as much detail as possible. Sometimes we don't have all the details, and perfect example was we were receiving our financials literally yesterday to be able to report that to the board, and so it's a scramble. I think going to quarterly is going to help with this a lot and being able to provide a more unified package of both the agenda and the materials to be more prepared for each meeting, but I definitely want to comply with public meetings law, and if there's ever a concern about that, let me know and we will fix it if we're not. But just didn't want to leave that hanging.
And I should also say, we appreciate Sean Tarter, even though he's not here today, that we can recognize him, but he will be missed as well.
Yeah.
Nate.
Just want to thank you for your leadership today and stepping up last minute. You did a great job.
Great job.
Process.
And a good day for it too, right?
Yeah, and then trying to fire. So compliments to you
A
all.
lot of new processes today, I think.
Compliments to you and thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will adjourn.
That's all.